Hello and welcome to the Soul Freedom Show. Your host here, Lokesh Baba. We are broadcasting here from California, and our website is soulfreedom.org. We are both on Blog Talk Radio as well as on YouTube Live right now. And we have a very special guest tonight. His name is Mr. Sevan Bomar. He's online all the way from Costa Rica, and he's one of the most diverse and enigmatic speakers of our time. He raises the bar for what is generally discussed by mentors, spiritual, and physical advisors. He's rapidly gaining recognition with his unique message. He specializes in linguistics, etymology, and ciphering. He extracts the esoteric meaning within language. Having spent years in deep study, diving through symbolism, occult sigils, and geometry, James has become an expert in defining what is beyond the veil. So with that, I welcome my very good friend and expert, Mr. Sevan Bomar. Hi, Sevan. How are you doing?
Honest Lokesh, I'm doing absolutely fine. Obviously, it's an amazing day. I'm feeling the energy. You know, it's a full moon yesterday, but it's still hanging around. So I'm just definitely in one of those stages of my life where I'm ready to bring that message. So it's a pleasure to be on Soul Freedom Show. And it's kind of definitely relative to what we're going to be delivering today as far as the name of the show. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, we've been planning this for a while, and we already have some dialers dialing in. But we're going to take some calls after a few minutes, maybe top of the hour. And why don't you tell us, Sevan, a little bit about your background, how you got started, and where you are right now. Please go ahead.
For sure. You know, I think those that are familiar with listening to my shows also know that this is the point where I generally have to repeat again what I said before. But instead of doing that today, I'm just going to get a little bit deeper into the formula, and that's what I call it, because I see it as that we all are shaped, formed, and structured based on what we're experiencing and what happens to us and how we react to what happened to us and all of that. And so each person is very unique because each person's gone through different situations that have allowed them to arrive at who they are now. But this part of the formula is a formula of adversity, and that's basically when you live a life where you encounter certain situations where you really have to ask yourself certain questions, and you need to get the truth delivered to you for that question, meaning that at certain points someone may be threatening your life, and you may need to know if there's really a supreme being at that point. And then bam, you meet the supreme being, or you meet a situation that shows you that there was some clear intervention that went on that prevented you losing your life. Same thing with when you're dealing with a very stressful situation. Sometimes it's for many people it's no longer playing, it's very serious. And then they're willing to go to any extent to get some relief or to get some answers with what they're experiencing. And generally, just because of how we are designed as human beings, we look to this higher source to give us some answers to what we're experiencing, somewhat of a father or a mother figure. This has become the character God to give us some information about what we're experiencing. And so my formula for diversity, which is basically making me a little bit different than the average person right now, but I think that gaining extra levels of knowledge about your process beyond this life and all of that is going to soon trend. That's going to be something that everyone's going to want to know what's going on with, and then that's going to be also a point that we don't turn back, because it's not going to be a trend like bell bottoms or a trend like I don't know, buying yellow Lamborghinis. It's one of those things where once you get involved in it, then you can't get uninvolved in it. And what it is you. It's a full awakening of the total dynamic of who you are, which is that information. Unfortunately, we're living on a dimension that even the ones who carry the greatest titles, be it president or be it king, will not get in front of everyone and explain to them the details of why they're here, where here really is, all of that kind of stuff. And so that, of course, leads us into this massive plot, a plot against us, not something that, you know, we develop, but something that's being done to us. And it has many details to it to unravel. But once unraveling those details, or kind of getting yourself out of that web or that lattice work, you break free into this unlimited side of self in full experience. And So what I'm doing is I'm basically documenting my progress into that. My life has been since a child pursuing spirituality, from first the question of what happens when you die, also going through a childhood where my mother was conscious about not allowing us to watch TV and take in too much of the curriculums and programs. We were homeschooled and things of that nature, which, as I always mention to everyone, by the time I was a teenager, I ran away from all of that rapidly because, of course, that's just how things work with children. It's like a slingshot. If you put them too much into one thing, the moment they get a chance to do something else, they go and do that, and they go and do it aggressively. So this is also an important part of my formula is that once I came out of this, basically going to temple or church or masjid every 2 to 3 days at least, and for prolonged periods of time during those days, even going to school in those places. Once I got out of that, I went headlong into what it's like to be affluent in this world, in areas that have a great deal of activity, such as Los Angeles, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Miami, and these places. And in that experience, still having that seed that was rapidly growing, that was planted inside of me, of spirituality, which actually is really the study of spirits beyond anything, but this inter-reflection with yourself to still keep asking the big questions. Is there really a God? What happens when you die? Where are you at right now? Are you in hell? If someone dies, can you stop them from dying? You feel sick? I feel sick right now. What's going to happen when we can't move around anymore? This is what I call spiritual, because there's literally something talking to you, and that's what people need to realize, is that when you get going to yourself, especially in English, then there's an angel talking to you, because angels speak English or English. So this is basically an angle of yourself, a diameter of yourself that has only spent this moment, this 30 years, however old you may be, 17 years, in grasping all it can, like a grab bag of who am I, right? And then so this is the character, and this is called an eidolon. This is the character that's really, or the spirit, if you may, because it is energy, that's constantly talking to you and getting you to have an introspection about your life. So that's what we're talking about. So the beginning of my life started with me doing that early. So about the time that I got about 24 years old, I came into a very aggressive spiritual experience. I won't say through happenstance, meaning that just not through coincidence, because I feel like everyone is going through some level of occultation, whether they're aware of it or not. Even the name of the street that they live on and all these different things have some deeper significance and meaning if we can extract that meaning. And so for me, again, like I was spending a lot of time extracting this meaning after the age of 24, because I came upon a very aggressive spiritual experience where I went into a higher vibration. And it's very easy for me to decipher everything that happened now, because of how I grew and how I kept, the abilities that I gained and all the stuff. But during that moment, it was, it can't even be explained. It's just like when you experience something that people have not even said is true, it goes a little bit further beyond things that you just haven't done because you haven't got around to it, or you don't have the money to do it, or whatever. And I really want to distinguish between the two, because there's many things that people want to do. People say, I want to be rich. And it's possible. But when you say something like, I want to see if God really exists, or if there's another dimension, the amount of people that are saying that it's possible is a lot less than the people who are saying it's possible to be rich, right? So you get into almost like a very elite club of happenings, meaning that everything that's going on, you can't just really go to someone and say, hey, the wall was spinning, and I felt energy coming out of it. I think something's going on, because at that point they're probably going to be carting you off to the crazy house if you're living, especially in the Western culture. And so, in a certain sense, to just sum it up, is that I went through a very major spiritual experience where I was able to confirm beyond the shadow of doubt, and that's a good term, that there was in fact multiple dimensions. There was, in fact, an ability that we had that is very similar to some kind of superhuman or super being, and that we were just really getting started. That, in fact, how much we've really uncovered in this world of what we really are, this can't even be measured by your small pinky fingernail, and that where our energy really is in that. It's only when we can realize that that's what's ahead of us and that's what we're going to be doing, and we start doing that, that we'll be able to tap into the energy that's associated with getting involved in that. And this is the interesting thing, because like if I say I want to become a bagger at a grocery store, this doesn't take much energy. All you have to really do is just go down there and they're going to hire you, because the bagger turnout is very high. They got people coming in and coming out. It's not the greatest job. But if you say you want to actually pilot a shuttle, now you put yourself into this whole different kind of group, and the level of energy that you're going to need to pierce through everything that is trying to prevent you from becoming that is actually what your body can generate when it's turned on. And when it's not, then you cannot really get to you can fantasize, you can dream, because these are very closely connected. But as far as actually putting your primary state of consciousness into it, that becomes somewhat of a task. And so, of course, part of my work is getting individuals into the know about how to do that for themselves, and also how to take themselves through the process that allow them to accomplish that.
Right, right. Wow, that's a very good introduction. And just to let us know, how old were you when you started your process, or was it like since you were a kid, you could see, you could feel something in you, or what made you, activate yourself in a way?
Well, it's different. It's funny because when you look at yourself as a kid, and then you see through your eyes as a child, and you start realizing how you're seeing things, and you're totally not seeing things the way you see things now. Yeah. How you see things is based on what you know to exist. And this is something that people should think about. It's like, let's say, for instance, a baby. A baby doesn't really come in contact with itself first. It comes in contact with its mother, who it actually, only through instinct does it actually know who that is, through some kind of connection that it feels. But other than that, it's completely lost to where it's at. It doesn't actually know how to define yet. So this is a key point, because it's also like that with all of the real aggressive emotions. Like, first of all, the baby is seeing only a shadow of itself most of the time. Like when the baby's standing in the room or looking around, and this is before mirrors start coming about, and it understands the whole mirror. And if you have children, you know about this, but children don't even understand the mirror when they first see it. They don't actually get that who they are is who's in the mirror. Yeah. And this is a key stage, because if you can go back before that point, then you can release yourself from time, because the body has a lot to do with time, but we'll talk about that later. So when this baby is interacting, what I'm saying is that even as a child, me personally, when I was seeing everything, it was as, I didn't have much judgment with it. And so I went through these stages where, one, I use spiritual books like the City of Pigrapha, the Apocrypha, all these kind of works as like my cartoons, because from how I understood it, that these characters really existed and that they had these powers, and then there was all sorts of things going on and different dynamics and killing, and nothing different than what you see in a cartoon these days, except for this was based on literature of thousands of years of a lineage or bloodlines, or whoever's bringing the local religion to you. And this is, in my case, it began with Wahhab Islam, and then it went into Gnosticism, and then it went into Christianity, and then it went into even Nawabianism, and it went into many different aspects as I was collecting all of the data of what was going on in the spiritual world. But remember, there was a gap between then. So I had only accomplished so much knowledge when I was younger. And so in perceiving the world, I would say it was around 4 or 5 years old before I started realizing the difference between what I was doing versus the external world, meaning that I had built abilities to, when I was in the dream, I would grab something in the dream, like a bicycle. And then when I wake up, I would just grab it, and then I would hold it really tight, and then I would wake up. And maybe about 2 weeks later, I would have that exact same bike. And this was something that I didn't go to people and say, hey, are you pulling stuff out of the dream? Because remember, the kid doesn't even, it doesn't know other people can't do that. It doesn't even, you see what I mean? So this is a big thing, because we have to rewind to understand like our real chain of thought and how we came in the process of understanding what we think we know. And how when you first come in, you don't have any definitions, so you don't know what a box is, you don't know what a radio is, you don't know what a mirror is, You don't know any of that. And you gained that from someone else who gained it from someone else to gain it from someone else. So that's holographic then, because that means the first one who really started defining everything, everyone else's definitions is going to be based on that. And so this becomes a interesting quest, especially as a child on. But I did remember, especially in church, during certain sessions where I would witness outlines of kind of what looks like an angel, like when you have it in the, when you do that in the sand and you see that thing down there, and I would see these outlines of that as large as the church. I used to even think that the reason why they built the points on the church was so that these things could fit their heads in. And so it was that kind of stuff going on, but not the rationale to be able to distinguish between people who weren't having these experiences and people who were, and who exactly these beings were. Like the mind doesn't, you're not deep as a child. So you don't actually even say, geez, what is that? And you know what I mean? So that's kind of what you're dealing with my earlier life and my spiritual experiences. I had a lot less hands-on with it and just was an experience. But after 24, that's when I got very astute at about not only recalling what had been happening since I was a child, but also what was occurring at that point, to see certain patterns and to see certain beings had been around since, I was 5 or 6 years old. And even now, because we just have so much data and so much information, we hardly get a chance to recall all of the moves that we made and everything that was done that was significant. Like if you think about it, it's quite incredible some of the things that we've been through, but we've had no choice but to move on. Time kind of says, okay, we're gone, it's over, let go, you got to go, it's time for you to go to the next thing. And then so you have these major experiences in life that you actually forget about. You don't even know how to connect them to the being of who you really are right now, so that it can also empower you. And so it has a lot to do with our memory. It has a lot to do with, if we can recall every single moment that something amazing happened to us, the energy of all those moments you would be present with. And this is what they really mean by being present. And then it's like an omniscience. All of your experiences are all present in that moment. And then the level of energy that you give off is just, it's phenomenal. Like we're only starting to tap into it. And I will tell people that this is about doing something that many great men in the past had set out to do, but it wasn't time, because we're in time, meaning that to introduce the world right now to an energy that is inexhaustible and is assimilable by them, meaning that something that can power human beings, is the next stage of, I guess they call it evolution or whatever. I'm not going to play the word games today, but the next stage of where we're going is the discovery of pranic forces. What's keeping the tree alive over here? Who is really the tree? And so this is going to open up this massive quest, because all of nature is what's really holding, not only in zoomorphication, but in biological encryptions. This is when an element is inside of a flower or a plant that can produce a certain kind of vision to give you information of things that took place in other star systems and on other segments of time, and even relative things to what took place on this planet. When we're actually able as biological organisms to interface with this of what we're standing on, the conduit Earth, and begin to go into its archives and to connect in with its tentacles per se, so it can extend our connection into experiences. That's the onset of omniscience. I'm not even telling people that that's going to be the grand finale. That becomes the beginning. And so this is hidden also, in, of course, in the ancient traditions as your roots, where you come from. And then, of course, Kundalini, which is even synonymous at times with Sophia, and even synonymous at times with Mary, if you can get deep into what these words and these acronyms really mean. So that roots is your story, basically. It's your history. It's your tale. And to have that, it gives you a certain level of stability, just like an animal, when gaining a tail, gets a certain type of stability. Watch a monkey on a tree. It's supreme stability. Because a tail is able to keep you balanced through your latest experience, while also giving you the ability to not think that once this is over, then it's over, then it's done. There's nothing after this. And I'm going to start getting really repetitive. People are going to see that because I think repetition is really the key these days, especially with people in the reptilian state of Brian, because it's the same thing. But people have to see now that every single thing that we're experiencing, it's going to take mining to pull out the real meaning of it. And this is the secret to spiritual knowledge and why spiritual knowledge always remain protected. Because spiritual knowledge is truth, so it connects with everything. As above, so below. So even the most petrified, distorted entity will bear a semblance to truth if you can see it, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is that once truth is spoken, someone with a very base state of mind and a very dense state of mind can interpret it one way, generally externally. And their interpretation will only serve to get them so far into the total realization of what is being presented. While someone who has graduated into their balance and into that, again, balanced state of consciousness is going to go in and find the balance within what is actually being presented. So, for instance, if you show me some huge, massive, ugly, dark entity, one in balance is going to say, but another version of myself. And then begin on the work on self, meaning that if they find that there's some kind of distortions, and this just if you run across something like this, it'll still be very odd for you to run across something like this. But if you did, obviously most people would run and be afraid. But in the highest state of thought, the reason why there's no fear is because there's no disassociation. That means that if someone that is a master seer or whatever you want to call it sees some fearful form or something that they are cowering or would cower around, then when they don't do that, they tap into the next level. And so to make this very simple, what you're dealing with Earth is there's a lot of things to fear. Like all sorts, like even being in the body, you're afraid to get cut and you're afraid to fall off something, you're afraid to die and you're afraid to lose and you're afraid to, so there's so many different levels of the fear. This would 100% account for why we're in this low energetic condition that we're in. But to take a glimpse across everything and to go into the area where there's no fear, you see that the only way that could be accomplished is if you do not make an opponent. You don't accept anything as being in control or have power over you, even if it's the universe. It doesn't matter what it is. And this is the next level also of the process of our expansion, is the realization that all is self, that there's no external forms really interacting with us, because once we stop that, then we actually become in control of what is interacting with us. You see what I mean? Like we animate what is enacting with us. So this means spontaneous generation, this creating things from scratch. Spontaneous communication with all forms. This means that you actually don't see the tree as any different than you. So thus, the wavelength that you and the tree are on the same. So now it can hear you. Because that's all that's really happening. When you can, to communicate with something, you just must get on its same frequency and same level. So if we're stuck all the time on one frequency, this is my identity, this is who I am. If we're stuck in that, then this is why everything else is locked out. And so, you know, this is just that process back to, you know, some people call it going home. I'm not sure exactly, you know, what that means truly, but realistically to me, it's nowhere to go. It's like just a point of realization.
And yeah, that takes me to the point, because you are doing a lot on your website. You have blogs and you have a why don't you tell us a little bit about what kind of activities you're doing currently to, you know, empower people in a way, and how you do it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I can only bring it relative to right now because, you know, the network's been up itself for about 6 years, and that's been just delivering, well, not just, but it's been delivering information to everyone in massive levels. And this is from esotericlibrary.com, which is about 3,000 books strictly related to the occult and how it functions. This is obviously the Resistance website, which is an archive of all the information that we've come into up until this point. and that spiritual progress. Also, it's a social network, so everyone else has had an opportunity to put in their information and allow others to study it and to communicate with one another. What I'm really working on now, because there's just a lot of things that we've done and we've delivered information. I've wrote a book, obviously, The Code to the Matrix, and that's available. But what's happening now is that we're launching, as you know, open source spirituality, because in my my whole progress through this, I've seen that any network is going to tank in quality to the individuals that are involved in it if there's any kind of real numbers. Meaning that if there becomes 50,000, 60,000, 100,000, 150,000, 250,000 people, and you're trying to actually tend to them at the same level of if it was 20 people, it's not going to happen for obvious reasons. And this is a challenge that I believe that the spiritual industry, because that's really what you see on the internet now, have shied away from. Everyone has just kind of kept their corner and kept their stance and haven't figured out really how to be the bridge for it. Because ultimately, if you're going to be a bridge, you're going to have to get involved in currency, because that's really the only reason why everyone's not together, because somebody else has got to go work and somebody else has got to generate something that's not right over the top of somebody else's, or else they can't even sustain themselves. So it's about, of course, being very candid about what everyone is still experiencing, no matter how high they say they've gotten on this, until you tap into the energy of Kundalini and how that's related to your currency. And that's a lot of the individuals that are bringing spirituality are financially struggling. And this gets into a big thing about affiliation, which is, you know, how the world is going to really begin to make its turn toward being balanced. Is people are going to have the opportunity to determine who they want to affiliate with, because everyone is really going to be offering, as far as the product is concerned, the same thing. And let me just explain that in a very simple way. Let's say, for instance, that I can make cups now because I have the fabrication to make cups. Also, I'm using different kind of materials. They're not, you know, they don't fill up landfills, etc. So this is the same cup, then same design, even better quality than, let's say, Dow Chemical produces. So the person has just a simple choice, especially if it's the same price or even cheaper. Do I purchase this one or do I purchase this one? So when you, that's a very simple explanation, but when you start seeing it everywhere with colleges, this means that the entire college is actually teaching individuals how to expand, not only mentally, physically, and spiritually. You see, those kind of dynamics are going on the college. Then the actual person has the opportunity to decide, do I go to this school that 15 years I'm still going to owe them money and be in debt and not even know, you know, anything really, because I don't have experience. Experience is everything. Or am I going to go to this new place that is actually teaching people how to develop themselves on an astral level and seeing into what's going to happen in the future in aeons from now, right? It's a simple, and there's no tuition. It's actually a scholarship. You see, yeah. So these become what we call no-brainers. But where people are not being active, or where these leaders are not being active, is getting in the think tanks and actually saying that that's what we're going to do, and then actually start doing it. I've watched the entire process right now. I've watched people come up with glorious geometry and great explanations of how it's supposed to be. But when it comes to actually moving a finger to what's really going to get it done, they can't even get back into that field anymore. Meaning that they don't even feel like that somehow they can even get on the computer anymore. They don't even feel like that they can even go to the bank anymore. They don't even feel like, you see what I mean? So you'll notice that there's this Jedi mind trick that goes on with the idea of what it takes to take the world into the next level versus the actions that it takes to take the world into the next level. So of course we're involved in actions, and we get more aggressive as time, or we feel like time is crunched more, or we're maybe running out of time. Meaning that how much resources does the planet really have at the rate that we're using them? Because obviously we're overusing resources. It's just like gas. We're only using 30% of the energy from gas. When the car, what you see coming out the back is the other 70%. That's the fuel that can't be used because the car doesn't need that much energy. So that's going on with everything. Like, we're using so much energy. How much can we really use of this, right? So that creates the time. When the energy is infinite, okay, there's no time. It's even beyond the word immortal. Like so just understand, when the energy is infinite, there's no time. When there's a limited amount of energy, right, that creates time. And so how that's hard-coded, though, let's talk about how that's hard-coded. That's hard-coded by the sun. Because what we watch every day is the sun get up early, bright, shiny. Then midday, it's height, and then around 5 o'clock, it starts to get dark, right?
Yeah.
And so this is like a hard-coded firmware in our mind saying that energy runs out. And then once it runs out, there's this whole dark period, and then we got to go to sleep, and we got to go into lower frequency, etc. So this is something that we have an opportunity to take a look at very deeply and see that once we tap into this energy that's free energy for the body, then we don't sleep. Then once we don't sleep, it takes us it's only a rapid period of time before we figure out that we're actually programming the reality. Because we're now tapped into that frequency, that wavelength. And what I'm talking to people about is about how to get back on the controls of the spaceship Earth. Because what Earth also is a very massive being, but that goes through these same cycles. And that's why when there's suns in the sky and there's moons in the sky, there's going to be cycles or circles. Mm-hmm. And then that means that the being, based on its stature and size, is going to go to sleep. Some people need to investigate how long does a whale sleep. The larger that you are and the more gravity that is working against you, the longer that you sleep. Mm-hmm. So while it may take us 5-6 hours to sleep, if you look at that in proportion to the Earth may go to sleep for, let's say, 250, 500 years. Let's say, call that the yugas. They say it's the whole universe that goes to sleep. And then when you get on those periods of going to sleep, this is just a slowing down in frequency. And then during these times, of course, you get what's taking place on Earth with malevolence or just bacteria, darkness, and what festers in darkness are the corners. These are actually wounds. So I'm not talking about positive or negative or which ones are good and which one's bad. I'm talking about the entire process of the creation, because the darkness is obviously a period where things begin to fester. Like I said, you get organisms on top of each other that never generally are around each other. You get all the things like what we see going on in our reality right now. And then there's this phase that comes after that.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah, there's no limit to where we can go from there. But I just wanted to bring up a topic you've talked about a few times. I've heard you speaking about the India and the native Indian connection, because that's the first time I heard from you. You talked about how the people from India are basically the same as what we call Native Americans or Native Indians, or even some people in South America. So can you just tell us a little bit about how that happened and how we can look at it?
For sure. Well, I will first say that there's what is being said and what they're telling us, which is not the truth. Like we can keep going on and on and on how we're getting books with lies in them. Right. But because we have a heart, which is an anagram of Earth, we tend to be very democratic about when people lie to us and think that, well, maybe they're not really lying, or maybe they didn't really mean it like that. We just want to believe that it couldn't, they couldn't be actually making the action to lie to us. Like something else is the other scenario, but that's not the case, that we're being lied to. So what happens is that you realize this when you really get spiritually involved, like when you actually do have to deal with other entities and other life forms as you're going through your process of as I call it, occultation, which is you becoming fully aware of what's happening here. And then what you get is you get this period where you realize that there's a big war going on here, and it's a color war. And that this color war is so deep, and this is something I'm going to be talking about tomorrow also on the show, because I have to show diagrams to this, that the skin of the planet, which is the atmosphere, is refracting these colors that we see in the rainbow. And that in an introspective way to understand it with your body, that same atmosphere is your skin. And so that the color of your skin actually has a lot to do with what kind of frequency you initially throw off, like the first signature that a person reads from you. And that's why a lot of people base what they think about you on your skin color. In fact, skin becomes the biggest division of the dimension, if you really think about it right now, because everyone's like, oh, I'm in this race and I'm in this group, and that's really what's doing it. So if you can see that on a more expanded level, what you get is you get that what we're calling the black man, the dark, kinky hair, etc., and the white man, the blonde, the blue eye, that they're not indigenous to this planet, that color spectrum is actually not indigenous to this planet. Those color spectrums are like the poles, okay? And this goes back to Orion. And remember, when I say man, I include woman in that, because remember, woman was inside of man, is what we're calling man, right? Yeah. So this goes back to Orion with a whole different thing: future tech, diamond bodies, pentagrams and phi, and creations of worlds and dreams, and what you would, like the height of where our technology could ever go is in another constellation. And there became a war. And then that war was with the two opposite poles of the spectrum, because this is the color war between black and white, okay? And I don't want people to just visualize people and colors and races when we're talking about this. I want people to see cymatics. I want people to see frequencies, and how when a frequency has to hold its frequency, when it says, well, I'm 593 hertz, it creates a wall between it and 594 and 592. So this means that wall, that barrier, creates limitations. It creates rules. It creates certifications. It creates laws as we know it. Okay? That's why they call them the laws of nature, right? Where two things can't really go together if they're too far apart from one another. Okay? So this war is like watching a fight in a club, where the fight is just spreading all over the club, and they're just tearing everything up, except it's in the universe. And they're taking this war from planet to planet to planet, warring, and using the beings that are generally indigenous to the planet as some kind of brokering or determination to who's winning the war. Okay? So if you want to know about Earth, not all the other planets, but Earth, what Earth is, and I'm going to talk about this more tomorrow, but there's a story in the Kemetan text about Ra. Okay? And Ra then is this chief solar deity, which is not a male or a female, but more of both, because it's a dynamo, it's generating energy. That Ra gives his name, and they try to genderize him then, but Ra gives his name to a female named Isis. Okay, and I can only explain this through mythology, and let me speed it up here. But he gives his name to a female named Isis when he falls into his drunkenness. Okay, so right away what's being said here is that when the sun goes into its waning phase, it's like a drunkenness. And then another being approached it, named Isis, which is basically a dollar sign, if you smash all the letters together, or a straight line in a curve, okay, approaches it and gains a name that allows this being to begin to create worlds. And this is hidden within the text of the Sophia tradition, where Sophia creates this world. That's the Gnostic tradition. Obviously in the Egyptian tradition, Isis creates the world. So what this is really talking about is that some being set out on its own to actually create a world. And that's also even in the Luciferian text, because we find that Lucifer is not a male or a female, but rather both. And this gets us into the planet Venus, which actually has an esoteric symbol of a heart, that the symbol of the heart corresponds to Venus. And that's why Venus is both the goddess of love, and also Venus traces a pentagram out in the night sky through its precession. So this gives you the connection between the heart symbol and the pentagram from a celestial level, okay? And so during this particular creation and projection, would be like if this being says, let's say Venus says, well, what kind of planet do I want? During this time that Venus said that she wanted a planet of love, of heart, okay? Now this is what creates the heart symbol. And this is why heart is an anagram for Earth. And this is why the heart chakra corresponds to Venus. Look on any ancient chakra system and say, well, what is the heart chakra? What is the planet for the heart chakra? Venus. Okay, because they're trying to connect for you tarot or the wheel or the precession of how things came about, because Venus is also Diana. And this is where we get the word Indian or Indiana. Because what Diana did was she created this world of love where all the beings were basically in love with each other. And they constantly populated with one another. And this began in what we call today Nubia, which is where you find the Dravidians. Okay? And because you can keep finding the Dravidians later on if they're not suppressing them in the south of India. But the reality is that the same people that were in Nubia, dark-skinned Dravidians, Dravid is where we get the word David from. So this was basically a group of original people that arrived that actually were a combination, and this is why what Diana decided to do, or what Isis decided to do, or Mary decided to do, was to marry the two most conflicting forces, i.e. black and white, to make this new being, or this Nubian, okay? And what this new being looked like is that they were dark, like Nagas, but their skin, or excuse me, their hair was like fur in a sense. It was like a very stringy hair, not like the kinky hair of the other side of the gene. So in Diana, and this is really where the heart symbol comes from and why they put a break in the heart. Because the heart also is what you see in a shell. Like if you take a shell, a clam shell, and you turn it to the side, you'll see it's a heart, because that clam shell has to do with Phi. It's created through Phi. So the heart came together with the combination of the two opposing forces. They married them. So there was this actual marriage, and this was actually called the covenant. Okay? And so now that's just a deed. People need to understand that the beat goes on. Like some people think that these moments just stay forever iconoclast in time. Sometimes they'll make a star to it so you can receive that kind of energy over again if you want to tap into it. But generally the beat goes on. So after that creation and that marriage, there were children. And this is why those children were the people who then migrated from Nubia to what we know as the Indus Valley. Because they were nomadic people. They migrated based on the earth. Because the earth has, and we even see it now, seasons. So you don't want to be on the wrong season. So if you're looking for a certain kind of energy, mainly abundance, then you're going to travel through the earth as the abundance moving through earth. And this is why even right now, that's what the Olympics is. And that's what even these World Cups are. They move and they wave energy. Because even right now, like Costa Rica's playing today, and this is a sidebar, but when Costa Rica won or hit a goal, you can hear the entire city. And this is a big city. You can hear the whole city. Right. And they're sending all of the energy to Brazil. So that's a huge wave. Even they got waves and fans sending energy there. And that's how the energy is harnessed. And then geomancy, which is the structures that they build and the crop circles and these kind of things, are what are moving that energy in different directions, right? So that's real future tech, okay? But to get back to what I was saying about Mary and her creation of world of love, is that these beings love to be fruitful and multiply. So much that even the original prototype from Orion, which is what we're calling man now, actually became blended with other life forms that, I mean, I guess in Sophia's magnificent dream, she dreamed up. And this is our animals, our insects, these kind of things. That what you actually get if you read the ancient texts, especially those from the Indus Valley, and even what you see in Kemet, is composite beings. This means a man with a tail and a scorpion claw, a woman with a spider face, and different things, because the first, and this is why I say Tiamat began to birth monsters first, as they say. But the free expression of the heart, there was no limitation, anything. It was like a huge orgy here. And this is why way later on, something tries to come in and discipline it and tries to divide one from another and just says, oh, this is enough, this is a mess, which is what you're seeing in the Catholic or Jesuit state of mind. You see what I mean? So if you can imagine Earth during the netherworld days, where the foundation to what we're standing on and what we have as our genetics was created, you had this infusion between the entities that live here and the Orion template, which gives physical bodies. And you find this drawn on the walls everywhere. You find it in Kemet. You find it in the Indus Valley, which are the two major important places, because that's how the foundation was developed. And those beings, because of their size also, still being encased within these atmospheres that we're also encased in, are actually still here. And where we're all at is really just on top of each other. And the only thing that separates us is frequency, is what we call division. Because once you come out of that, you see it all. Like, you see pretty much everything. You see all of the ancient empires based on where you're standing. Like, whatever was here is always here. So you actually see that. And that's why many areas are off limits on Earth right now. Like, they don't let you go and sleep in Crete, where the big temples are of Baalbek, and you just staying in there all night for a few weeks. Like, they don't allow that kind of thing. And it's because you're laying still right on top of the ancient temple. It will still be there. And when you go to sleep, if you phase lock with it, if your frequency becomes harmonic with it, which is done through signs, tones, symbols, etc., songs that were being sung in that same area, then you actually get harmonized with it and see it. This is an amazing phenomenon on the planet, but obviously off limits, because there's more to the story. That obviously what happened, and there was a major war that took place where Tiamat and her monsters went to war with the massive template of Orion, meaning what would be the Jesuit Empire, the one who attempts to take the father role in the universe, utilizing technology to go to planets in order to begin to separate them and to put them back in order. They call this masonry. It becomes a person who knows how to shape, form, and fashion gems, because all the planets look like gems and jewels from outer space, but they're rough and uncut. So then one of these craftsmen come to the planet and start shaping, cutting roads, cutting trees, splitting atoms, cutting everything. That's why their chief symbol is a sword. Even the shamanistic symbol is a sword. It's blades, because this is a metaphor to that when you create languages and you create buildings and you deal with technology and anything external, it's like cutting into something that would otherwise be unshaped, unformed, unfashioned as a womb. So just to bring this in full circle, there was a major diaspora that took place, because to get into what you asked as a question, but this is obviously some good stuff. But what happened was there was a diaspora during what we call the inundation. This is the inundation period where the vault of heaven collapsed. If the vault of heaven collapsed, meaning that if there is a great flood, which we know there was, right here in Kentucky, there's seashells on the mountain range. Right here in Chiripo, there's seashells on the top of the mountain range. So this is 100% proof and evidence, because nobody's going around trying to put all that stuff there. They'll do some other things like some structures and things, but trying to put all those seashells on top of the mountain, forget it. So what I'm telling you is that it was all underwater at a certain point. But what caused that is because Earth's water broke. Her womb broke. She actually already birthed probably what we're calling our ancestors now. But this was somehow simultaneously timed with the entry of some other, what we would call extraterrestrial form, meaning that a form of conscious that is alien to ours. Like, we don't think the same way they do. And they penetrated our world. And this is also very sexual and symbolic to the phallus and the yoni, because our world is just a womb. It's dark. It doesn't give off its own light until the beings start doing that. So till then, the beings from the outside in the macro see it as feminine, even if there's men, what we call men on the planet. So when they penetrated the planet, they broke the canopy, because that's what happens when humans or hymens are on planets and never been experienced to any kind of extraterrestrial forms or foreign states of thought, and then all of a sudden get invaded. And then so that penetration broke the canopy, and that also caused a massive flood. That's what broke down all the irrigation canals and chambers from Indus Valley all the way to Egypt. Everyone was basically, everything they had and everything that they knew, it would be like Katrina. And now all these people were just basically trying to survive, and that's why they left, and some went to what we call India, some went to what we call America, some stayed in the Central America, but there was always one common feature with all of them: their hair. Generally a black, very thick, coarse, 7 to 8 ether hair. When you cut it down the side, it actually forms an oval. That's in Diana. So this is how geometry tells us the origins of of the people who were there and who was originally there first, etc. So these people remember that, so their entire empire and everything that they were doing, because they basically have been given one command: be fruitful and multiply. So in that, which is what goes on in the underworld, the underworld is under the microscope, everyone. It's when you put bacteria inside of somewhere and you turn on all the lights. You'll watch this bacteria replicate so fast, and it's because they're basically having sex or six. And so until someone cuts the lights back on again, there's going to be a massive reproduction, and that's why these are the most numerous people on Earth. They're actually still the Japanese. They're the Chinese. The melanin recession didn't start coming in until the actual invasion, because the invaders were melanin dominant, meaning really black with kinky hair. And then the ones that followed up with their ships were blonde hair, white, with blue eyes. And then they, as you see in all the ancient texts, generally had their reproductive symbols out, meaning that that's the hidden mystery about the fallen angels, or the ones who came from the sky. Because when they got down here, it wasn't even like they were actually trying to civilize the place. They were trying to create a home also. So this is where you get the interbreeding, and this is why in Orion, later on comes this transmission that, hey, some of the ones on the Orion template, meaning the pentagrams, have gone down into the hexagrams, which are the wombs, in duality, and actually begin to create some other offsprings, which is bringing all sorts of strange geometry. So, you know, this is what you will see in transmissions, and these transmissions they go from energy. This is not someone getting on a radio and saying, Earth to Orion, are you there? Yes, this is Orion, come in. It's not like that. It's the energy that's coming off of the stars tell each star in adjacent what's going on. Like, just like if I'm around you, if you start giving off this energy, I'm going to know something's wrong with you, or you're happy, or I'm going to know even more details, especially if I'm very empathic. So see the universe's communication as a communication system of empathic knowledge. So it's very easy for another being that has these kinds of abilities, which really come hardwired, to know what's going on one planet from another, to know when to go to that planet because it's sleep time for that planet, it's womb time. You know, all those kind of things become a part of your consciousness when you go into the next stage of realizing that you're not going to die, that you're basically going to live forever. Now, here's the thing. Notice how dying has everything to do also with being inside of Diana. You're in death, in the place in which death is even possible. Now, people need to also see that these three-dimensional worlds are special in the sense of they actually have a component called death, which all the other spaces and expanses don't have. Limitless means no death. Limited means death. So this also serves at times to be a way for beings to get into more levels of experiences, conclude experiences, and start new experiences again. Because let's say, for instance, if you're just going through one long, massive experience and you start not liking that experience, how are you going to end it? So the hard code for ending an experience is called death. That's when you terminate the experience and then you go on to another one. But if you start having this magnificent experience, you actually lead, if it's a real magnificent experience, you lead yourself into what begins to create the energy that is necessary for you to have that experience indefinitely. So those who discover happiness truly forever know how to be happy. They don't lose that reference. And so just remember that, behold, the ladder's coming up and down. And this will answer a lot of questions, because some people say, well, did all humans come from Orion? Did all humans, when I'm saying templates and other states of consciousness, do all humans have that same kind of thing going on? No. Some humans are coming from, or what we're calling humans, are coming from subterranean levels, meaning that they actually they went from the netherworld up. And this is why they're going to be really strong and capable of dealing with anything in a physical reality, because that's their home territory, right? That's what the whole meaning of homegrown in Zion was about, okay? While some are coming from outside the envelope. And so when they come in, they're going to come in with foreign states of consciousness. And so this is what you should see it as.
And we're going to explain this very simple tomorrow. But remember I told you about the atmospheres, okay? And how the atmospheres are basically the skin of the planet. And that on yourself, then, that your atmosphere is your skin, okay? So what happens if I poke a hole in your skin and I leave that hole open? It gets infected, right? And this is because somehow the skin is keeping very negative bacteria and things like that from getting inside of the more sensitive areas of the body. How is it doing that? The mystery is when you turn on a third eye, you'll see what human beings really are. They're shining. It's something about this skin which was accredited to the serpent, that its scaly, shiny hide, which we still have, and the rest of it is at the nails, on the etheric level, it shines. So any kind of organism that is a bacteria in a low vibratory, dark frequency, it can't even come close to it. It just basically it vaporizes before it even gets close. So it just chooses not to. So this is important about understanding also what is going on in the planet. So the planet's atmosphere is the same thing. If we let off any kind of nuclear weapon, which is what happened when Oppenheimer, I believe that's who that was, but basically bought in what we're calling today the archonic forces, because they let off an explosion that was the ricochet of it. Punched a hole in the atmosphere for that moment. It just created this huge tube in our world to where things from the outside, bacteria, could come into the world. And this is where you see the world's states of consciousness begin to change, because the more of this foreign element, this is just things that are strange. Anything that's strange, it's out there. Anything that's not strange, it's in here. That's how we work our consciousness. Everything that's inside of you, you feel comfortable with. Things on the outside, you're still debating if you like it or not, if you're going to eat it or not. You see what I mean? So on the outside of the sphere, that's when you get many of these foreign life forms. And so those who are looking to get into their next stage of consciousness have to realize that you have to jump off your etheric centers, which we have connected to the chakra centers and then are connected to the organs, because this allows you, like a dynamo, to shine so bright that you don't need an external light. You actually don't need a planet with the sun to come in and mediate everything for you all the time by giving you the judgment of whether it's good or evil. You're able to actually go out to where there's limitless. You can go anywhere. You can go do anything. It's like the thing about going anywhere and go do anything, you even need to begin to manifest in your mind what are you even going to do in anything that you can do. Like, do you got a catalog? Someone give you a catalog of anything. It's like, here's a catalog. You can do anything. What is it going to say? It's just going to say one word or a few words. You can do anything. So realize that what we've done then in these worlds is we've created realities to where we can begin to grasp for ourselves tools that we wish to use in order to shape, cut, form, fashion what is anything. So, because if we don't have chairs, if we don't have knives, if we don't have hammers, if we don't have green, if we don't have all those things, we don't have anything to distinguish what one thing from the next is. And so the way you gain that knowledge is in universes or universities. Universe meaning uni, meaning united, verse meaning in conflict. You go into worlds where there's all these dualistic spectrums, and it's either you can do it this way or you can do it that way. And then this gives you the ability to begin to start perceiving things. It's what we call perception, right? And I'll tell you the truth. Clear face, or the more vast, or I can't even use vast face state of consciousness, it's beyond vast face, but clear face sees this as a disadvantage, meaning that the limitless side of yourself sees shaping, forming, fashioning, learning, languages, numbers, letters, colors, shapes, programs, these kind of things as disadvantages. Because the only thing the clear face side of us wants to do is not really do anything. It wants to be unmovable. This is the zone. In the zone, you're not a wave anymore. That's why the ancient names for what we're calling the Supreme Being now just meant unmovable. Because everything else that's moving, where if it's giving off a wave, a tone, and vibration, there's going to be a reaction. With every action, there's a reaction. And so any being that wants to remove themselves from action and reaction has to remove themselves from identity and remove themselves from all that. They have to go into the zone. Now, here's the interesting thing, and this is why I believe that the Jesuits arrived on the planet. It's because it was then determined that somehow what Diana accomplished by putting these two conflictive forces together all into one child and creating this baby, and these babies, is that these babies were capable of doing both. They can actually be in the zone and in duality at the same time. Could you imagine this? Actually, that's the only way you can do it, through your imagination. See, I believe personally that the beings in the past and in our timeline didn't have what we call imagination. It either was or it wasn't. There was no maybes. There was no gray areas. Gray is obviously the combination of white and black. There was none of that. There was only these poles and rules and structures to how things must go. And then there came about consciousness and stages of consciousness that started moving and tampering with those rules. Now, obviously, there's been pros and cons to that. We're even living in that. The knowledge of how to govern a planet has fallen into the hands of the one who does not want to govern the planet but wants to destroy it. So these are all challenges that we face in our total metamorphosis of realizing what we're even dealing with. Meaning that if someone is actually just giving this knowledge to you on a piece of paper somewhere, and you're on another planet and you're just reading about it, it's not going to have the same weight as if you've been on Earth and you experienced this. People need to realize that I always talk about we got to get in the experience now. We're in the experience now. But you need to realize that that doesn't mean that you just go and start doing something. This means that you become present in yourself to realize that you're in the experience called Earth. And this is a hell of an experience. The greatest challenge here is life, not death. So what we have in this is that we have this thing that we're dealing with. There's all sorts of stuff that can face us around each and every corner, right? And so for our connection, obviously, when our connection is established very deeply with one another, we are not afraid at all to approach that. And not only, the reason, the phenomena that causes us not to be afraid is that once fear dissipates, the level of emission and light that we give off actually shines on everything that is trying to be like a boogeyman or trying to be like secretive and trying to be a lie and it shines on that and it clears it right out. Imagine you're dealing with a seer, an empath, and then you start lying. And then you realize that they know I'm lying. You see what I mean? Like this is what I was talking about of the metamorphosis of this world based on affiliation. Once people start to, what we're calling lower states of consciousness, realize that they cannot survive off of us anymore. And this is the big thing because we're keeping them alive. Like we are the ones that are patronizing. We are the ones giving them the choice. Right? Like the more money we give them, and they keep making choices with our money. The more patronizing and watching of them, they can keep making choices to what they show us. But once we cease affiliation, and then we begin affiliation with those who are not doing it in that negative way, then because those beings who are doing it in so-called negative way, which is a reptilian state of consciousness, the same thing that creates their consciousness kicks in. And it says, oh shit, we can't survive anymore unless we actually get on that level. And then it actually gives them a reason, because the reptilian, it works like that. The reptilian, if you give it some incentive to become something else, that's the only time it does it. And this is when you understand real nature and you understand these energies, which our ancestors did. They knew how to bait a carrot in front of a rabbit to get it to become a lion. They knew how to cause the specific phenomena that's necessary to get a complete metamorphosis or an alchemical transmutation from the being. So we have to see ourselves in the same situation. First of all, we're in a crucible. That's what this earth is. It has several sacs around it. So there's some pressure here. There's gravity, right? Gravity equals death. Where there's, as they say, where there's cats, or where there's rats, there's cats, there's dogs. So there's certain things that equal other things. And so while we're in this crucible, or being crucified on the cross, which is the four winds, north, east, south, west, what happens is that alchemical transmutation makes us at least 1,000 times more stronger than we were. And how you can prove this is you can do alchemy. And you can take an element or herb and then actually take it through the alchemical process, which makes it a spagyric, and it becomes 1,000 times at least more stronger than the original herb. Also proving that every being that lives here, and this is why we need to get our priorities right with our levels of respect, because as everyone starts collecting themselves and becoming awake, you're going to find other life forms that are not going to be so happy if we find ourselves on the opposing side of them, meaning eating them. So what you're looking at with each human being then, to understand the mathematics of the planetary systems, which is Metatronic, is you would actually find that the amount of division would create the strength of the being. So if there is 9 billion people in the world, let's say 8 billion people in the world, each human being is at 1/8 billionth of its strength. Okay, so this would get you an idea of what you're dealing with here when the world awakes. Oh my goodness. 1 in 8 billion generally of the strength of the abilities, that's what you're using right now as a human being, because you have limitations. This is why you have 10 digits. You can only do as much as 10 digits can really process, right? So this is the 1 in 8 billionth, or 1 in 10 billionth will probably be the maximum number. So what happens here is that in this process, then you can look at, if you want to understand where the other states of consciousness are, because they're all around you, what then is the grasshopper on? How much of the grasshopper are we seeing right now? Seeing that his numbers are into the zillions, I think, or into the trillions of grasshoppers, way more than humans, right? So he's at 1 in 8 trillionth, let's say, right? And that's what's making that grasshopper seem smaller than you. But once that grasshopper family, and I'm just giving you an analogy here, once that grasshopper family comes into full awareness, what you'll be dealing with is one large grasshopper at the full strength of what that species really is. And this is why even Solomon said that one should probably study these insects to get an idea of the other worlds, because they bear different levels of geometry, they bear different kinds of abilities, and they also bear a different state of organ, an organ that is liquid, not solid. Not a plasmic organ, meaning that our organs are solid enough. We pull out a heart, lay it on the table. With one of these grasshoppers, it's like liquid, and it becomes very difficult for you to distinguish where the heart is, where the liver is. So they're basically already in subatomics. So even if you would give credit to that species just once, and this is why racism and division is only going to make you weaker, then you can actually realize the level of quantum power in the real stage of the what I call spirit tech that our ancestors had already tapped into and were aware of by simply studying what was placed in front of them at the planetary system that we're located on. Meaning that if you look at the design and the structure, and then you look at what's inside the organism and you see it better than an iPhone, damn it. You'll find all sorts of things out. It goes for the plants, it goes for the plants, and it goes for the animals. And it's a big thing, because here's the other thing, and again we'll talk about this more tomorrow, but another thing is that what you're seeing in the reality for those who actually came here before and that were already here in different stages, different sets of geometry, is everyone loved to put their mark on it. It's like something about just with animals, they mark each other. Okay, so if you can understand the material world, it has a lot of marks in it. That's really what language is. Footprints and all these kind of things. Or someone's always tagging and writing on this. It's the same thing going on downtown. So what happens is when one of these glorious beings come through and then leave, they may just leave a species of flowers. And that species of flowers is them. That's them on this level at 1 in 19 trillionth of the power that they have now or wherever they are. Right? So this is why we're all one huge family, because that flower, no matter what, still puts me in touch with that being if I understand what I'm doing with that flower and how to become harmonic with that flower. And this is why plants have temperaments. And I'm not saying all these beings are positive or negative. I just need to let you understand spirit tech. Because what happens is that if you take on the mode or the frequency of that particular element, then you can become it. So this also means that, like, because plants have temperament, some plants don't like sunlight. Okay? Some plants like to be in the dark. And some plants need funguses to grow. And some plants, you see, so each of these plants have different temperaments because these temperaments are the same as what humans have. And so this is where the biorhythms really are, is that if a human takes on this melancholy, depressed temperament, then they may become like a willow, right? And then that willow kind of personality is also a nymph or a dyad or basically a separate spirit that is harmonic with other entities or trees that have that same kind of demeanor. So, you know, I'm just going to scratch the surface on that just a little bit, but just remember, harmonizing with something is becoming like it. So even if humans choose to become like computers, then they will adapt the mentality of silicone, which is different than plastic. We need to understand the major agent in a computer is silicone, not plastic. And silicone is synonymous with silica. And these are basically crystals. And that's why computers are crystals. So, you know, this is about, you know, the next level of this, because this is not technology, what you're looking at. This is confusion. This is when you install Windows with a Mac boot strap. You get an error conflict that takes you an hour to fix while you could have been more productive at doing something else and you were just trying to send an email. This is where the same people who invented the computers also invented this modern religion that we're dealing with, and about 2,000 more science fiction books with Zeno, the god, dumping people in volcanoes and levels of programming from Scientology, etc. So those same individuals, Hubbard and all the rest of them, Scientology and the UN and all that, they're the ones that developed this confusion. These units, if just having silicone and a magnetic source, can be designed in which a software could create a centrifuge, meaning that your desktop could be your power plant if it was done the proper way, because it would just create a centrifuge. It would use magnetic energy and a small amount of electricity to not only boot the computer up, but also to give off additional power sources for other adjacent devices. I mean, if you want to do it right. So we still have to remember, though, that the same people, though, that wrote the books with all the lies in it are also the ones really creating the technology. Sony, S-O-N-Y, is Scion, S-O-N-I, a Y is an I. So you move it around, Sony spells Scion. That was a prismic or prison system created to keep the beings trapped in infinite loops of dealing with stuff that we think is advanced, even though we had to get to where the Jetsons were. So the Jetsons was, what is that, 1985? You see, so this is where we stop playing the game with all these groups of individuals because, oh, we're going to do this for humanity. We're going to change things. We're going to do this. Start looking at their works. Like, see how many videos they put out. How much work are they doing? Like, what are they talking about? Like, what kind of shape are they in, first of all? Because if you're going to run the gauntlet, man, there's titans out here. And there are physical impedances in this world. It could even be some food stuff. So what happens is that there's lots of things for you to challenge. So you have to be really up to it, up for the task. And this is something that we can generally see with the individual. We still have that kind of intuition. We have that kind of discernment. We can see that within an individual immediately if that is the one that we believe is going to get us into the next stage of consciousness. Now, it doesn't mean that we put everything on to one person, but it also means that we have mentors. Because let us not forget, our world is only existing based on mentors. It's based on what we teach our children. They learn mirrors, they learn colors, they learn all this stuff from their real mentors. A real mentor is someone who teaches you something. So even if they teach you how to hate, they teach you how to be angry, they teach you how to be, that's still a mentor. So we need to realize it's not a negative thing. It's not egotistic to say that I'm going to be a magnificent, balanced mentor. Because notice how the game that that everyone's playing, people do good things and they say, oh, you got too much ego. If they say they did it, no, that's too much ego, right? But yet, the next action flick, they kill everyone. They even beat up the woman. They notice in new movies, every time there's a woman just getting brutally beat up by a man. And this is the stuff that when it comes on TV, everyone's like, oh, it's just a movie. We don't have to say anything about that. But then when you come on in real life, talking about real life stuff, that's when they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe he said that we're gods. Yet in the movie, they not only acknowledged that you were God, but also destroyed your entire planet. You see what I mean? So this is where we create these rules and laws and start policing our own state of consciousness. And I'll give people this secret, and I'm not even sure if I may just re-air this show tomorrow, because this is really the meat of the substance of it, although I have a lot of imagery to show tomorrow. And it's really that if you think of, let me just get my notes here, but I have something very important I want to say, and I know it's at visually the end of my notes on what I was going to talk about tomorrow, but it's also a very important thing that I just want to get across, and so let me just pull that. Really
sure,
quick.
and also after that you could maybe tell our listeners about tomorrow, because some people may not know which program you talk about tomorrow.
We do a show every other Sunday, and let me see.
And that's at astralquest.com. So.
For sure. Okay, that's what it is. Here's what the real deal is. Okay, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to see if I can take a break here just because it freshened up.
Sure.
This is the real deal. All of the questions, watch how the world is being played now. All of the major questions never get asked. But the stupid questions, they get asked and sometimes answered, right? And so the truth to this is that the major question, and I have to go back to my notes again here because this is a big thing that once you install this in your mind, everything's going to change. And what this is about is that so everyone seems to know everything about something, right? The extraterrestrials, aliens, cooking food, all this kind of stuff, right? Except for what happens when you die. What happens when we die, we seem to kind of shove this in this shelf that, well, shit, everyone dies, so obviously whatever happens to them is going to happen to me. So
yeah, I don't care.
Whoever's got the whole death thing under control, then that's what's going to happen to me, because, you know, why should I be the one that's figuring it out? After all, Miley Cypress is about to come on stage. So what happens, though, is that this creates another problem or phenomena that is very rare, because the ancient traditions, nobody did this because everyone knew that you need to start basically planning now. So some people that have these projections, there's like 5-year projection, 10-year projection, right? And this is as far as they can see. It's like in 10 years, where you imagine yourself, well, I'm going to have 2 kids, and they go into all that, right? But if you say, well, after you're dead, where do you imagine yourself? They don't.
Yeah, they don't care.
Do you see the play then? If you don't imagine yourself after death, then there is no you after death. Right? That's how the loss of memory starts, because if memory works in the other direction, all this stuff works in the other direction. So what happens is that if we don't say, well, what's going to happen after we die, and then start saying, well, shoot, it's going to be the day after ascension. Yeah, we're all going to be together. And I just always get excited about that, because there's some really awesome people that I met that I just been wanting to kind of get with. And then it's like, but, you know, this world offers certain limitations. You can't even like travel here and go there and all that kind of stuff. But after we're all going to be together, and it's going to be so often. Like, we're going to probably spend like at least 3 forevers just saying what's up. And then after that, since, you know, we just have to kind of create an after, because there won't be a time. So we'll kind of lose track of time. You see what I mean? So what happens is that you start to project into this space, and at first it's just like all you're doing is you're sending these large objects into an abyss. It's like they don't have anything that they're fixed on, and this is actually the spiritual process. It's like, or the soul progression. It's like as you start visualizing yourself beyond the time of death, you're actually turning it into you're throwing all this stuff into these holes. And it has nothing to grab onto, because there's not much that you really know about that, right? But the more objects you seem to throw in there, the more it starts to fill up that space. And then it starts to actually become cohesive. It creates your own net, per se, to something that's going to, like a safety net that keeps you from, when you fall, from hitting the ground. Notice they call it fallen angel. So if the fallen angel has a net, then they don't hit the ground. So what is the net? The net is your projection. We cast a net, a projection of lattice work that basically is a program field using our centers and our chakras, our tones and our vibrations, our experience into this abyss. And then we light up the abyss. We actually start to create in a space. This is no different than when we've gone into some place that's all forest, and then, you know, 100 years later you come back and it's a super city. This is what happens. It's like you go into something that doesn't seem, it's like all these trees look the same to me. There's a couple different ones here, but It looks like it's all forest. And then all of a sudden you got streets and you got all these different things. And I wouldn't tell people that they should shy away from that. Meaning that some people say, well, don't imagine anything like this, and you need to get to the next state of consciousness that you can reach. And if it takes you building a world in your mind based on what you know and what you understand, be a world builder. Don't let anyone tell you that you need specific kind of tools and things to build your world. But mainly, don't let anyone tell you that you should not be visualizing what you're going to be doing after you leave here, because that's also what's going to change who you are here. That's going to give you more space here. The glass is going to cease to be half empty and become half full, I guess, as they say, or not even having a limit, right? And so this is the techniques, but even deeper than that, this is deeper than techniques. This is the process that occurs within the beings that we all are right now called humans. That's necessary for us to begin to go out on our own. Because notice still, like, no matter who you want to paint the good character or the bad character, it's because you're still in mama and daddy's house. And their rules, because they still have rules, are their rules, because there's a lot of organisms and things running around here. You can always better this thing, but there are certain constrictions to it. So in our consciousness, I'm talking about on the spiritual level, I'm not talking about on the physical level, because we got big work to do on the physical level. The whole thing is run amok. So what happens on a spiritual level, though, is that now you need to get away from mama and daddy or God, okay? God and goddess you need to move away, move out. Yeah. And what this has to do with a person's consciousness, though, what this is about, this is not about going back, per se, on all your beliefs. This is about going forward with your beliefs. Okay, and realizing who's who, that none of these beings are really external. They're all inside of you. So any pictures and any of that is, all that's going to be misleading. It's about seeing that the mother and the father state of consciousness is every time that we feel like there's something that we cannot do. Like, let's say you get into an accident or, oh, God, please help me. And you're not calling on yourself. You're actually sending this frequency out to some kind of celestial body that may be able to intervene for you. But never that you're about to actually stop time, rewind things, move the car out the way, and then start it again, right? Because that would seem out of our concepts and consciousness. But God can do it, right? But then the maximum realization that who this God character is, or really the supreme being character, yours truly, when awake. Notice the difference. Awake, though, to it. Anyone that is asleep to it doesn't believe this. This is all truth. So anyone who does not believe their supreme being don't believe it. So they're asleep to it. When you're awake to it, it's not a belief anymore. It's a fact. So this is, this is where it goes. And I feel like we got a lot into that first little, I believe that's been an hour of the transmission. I'm not sure, an hour and a half. But
yeah, it's almost an hour and a half, and we have a few callers waiting. So maybe let's take a break, and then when we come back, let's try to take in some calls.
For sure. And I'm going to turn these lights down a little bit, too, because it was daytime. So I got the high beam in my face. Everyone's seeing me all greasy over here.
I know. And I see the evening time over there. I didn't even notice it.
Yeah, and then you can't really, there's a light here, so that's what's actually making that. So I'm going to turn that off.
All right, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Okay. 5 minutes. Honest, everyone.
Sure.
Hello.
Yes. Hi. You're on live with Sevan Bomar right now. This is Lokesh. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for taking this call.
Sure.
Nice.
The show is amazing.
Thanks.
I just had a question for Sevan, if he doesn't mind. I wanted to ask about how in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, it talks of darkness covering the ocean and God's Spirit moving over the water. And in the original Kemetic text, I believe it says that the Merkaba has to do with the later etymology of Mer, meaning water. And I just wanted to know if Sevan knows anything about a possible Dogon connection to these religious books, and if the I believe mitre, Pope has anything to do with the connection, and about the scales he was talking about creating light, having to do with the fish. I don't know if this has significance or not. I just wanted to hear his opinion.
Okay.
Okay. This is a very.
One second. Let me. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is very simple. So I'm gonna go through a lot of these questions, and I'm gonna go through them very fast, but it's gonna make a lot of sense. All of the stars that you're seeing in the sky are giving off rays, and those rays penetrate. Okay, they're like straight lines, like needles. Really, they're like tubes. Okay, and then when they go into Earth, then they establish a connection with Earth, and then they send their life forms into Earth. And based on the geometry and basically the emanation of that particular celestial body, that is how it will manifest on Earth. So if it's as a fish, because let's say the Sirius constellation Sirius B is related to fish, then you'll find a species of fish that actually bear many different synchronistic connections to Sirius. Not only is Earth being done like that, but all planets are being done like that. So that's where you get the big connection with where all of these different entities come from, and also why there's so many different stories. Because it actually became the zodiac. They tried to keep it narrowed down to 12 because everyone had a story. If you look back, all the systems, they have certain stories. Like even those systems in the Metatronic fields have 72 names. Shemham Faresh. That's the beings around the throne. So that's all the interconnection with the Jehovian fields, which is Jupiterian. There's obviously a conflict going on in all the planetary systems because they're all dualistic worlds. So the Jehovian system has a conflict with basically the covenant, and I don't definitely want to open up that today because that's a whole long story. But basically, it just sums up as an original culture or cult or petri dish that belonged to a group of individuals, and then some other beings liking that cult or culture or petri dish and deciding to take it for themselves. And, and this becoming a back and forth volley to who it really belongs to. And this is very similar to Montague and Capulet's story. This is very similar to pretty much every single story that you're going to get, because what you're dealing with is all the beings that come from outer space, per se, are foreign to Earth. Okay? So this means that it's like this weird looking guy and then this girl. And now they have this baby. So that's literally what it is. And that's why some people see it as very offensive with the relationship with Earth as almost like raping in a sense, because when certain life forms come to our planet and are not heart chakra orientated, maybe be completely netherworld orientated, they will actually do a lot of damage. And I got a term for this. Motherfucker. It may sound crazy, but I believe that the original text of that word is when a being that is being taken care of by this planet starts to screw the planet. And we just got to get rid of these motherfuckers. So that's all I really have to say. That I mean, it brings it into context because there's this other side of this, and people see it more tomorrow because I'd rather do it on my network. But the reality is that all of this playing games and playing with time, like Time Lords don't do that. Meaning that once you sit into a certain side of yourself, and mainly in balance, and you get into your own throne, your own Tron, you realize that you're the one that decides when time's up. Not everyone else. And that's what I was talking about me returning. I need to turn this light down a little bit. It's blasting me. But I was talking about me returning because I went off into different stages of consciousness, different perspectives, just so I can make sure that what I believe is going on is really going on. Because remember, when I went through that aggressive spiritual experience, the wall fell. Like I could see into minds. I could hear other life forms, and I could identify those life forms. And I was gaining massive levels of information just because I was able to remain stable. I did have one initial onset period where I did end up in the crazy house, and that's why I put that post on the Resistance site today about what a shaman sees in the crazy house, because he explains it. And he's got to be 100% right, because exactly how we explain certain scenarios is exactly what happened to me. Once the vibratory frequency started going so high, like I lost control at a certain point. I couldn't, something was talking, I couldn't actually stop it. And this is horrifying as a person. I even said to myself, there you go, James. Oh no, now you've broke your brain. I told you you were going to eventually go too far. You see what I mean? So there was even an introspection within myself, talking about this part of the brain that was not ceasing communicating, how it was going to definitely drive me crazy, because it's just strange, okay? It's stranger than anything. And then through that process, I actually, within the next 24 hours, was being carted into a crazy house, okay? And I'm sitting here trying to explain to these people, but I still can't even control my energetics, that I've actually met God, that I understand exactly who God is, and that he's not what everyone even thinks. So I'm not only just trying to elaborate on what people call their highest belief, I'm also trying to explain, look, I've actually seen the entire field and how it's all developed, and it's all has a very malevolent connotation to it from a growth level, meaning, why isn't everyone else experiencing this? This is crazy. I shouldn't be the only one on the planet even investigating this. And because I was also so rational and so logic before this, because I remember I've been dealing with computers since I was a little kid. So there was also this having to 100% authenticate anything before I can authenticate it as real. And because I wasn't high, I wasn't drunk, I wasn't even smoking weed, and then all of this stuff was happening, I couldn't actually. It was tearing me up to not believe that it was real. You see what I mean? Because this is where you start stripping your own screws. If you still are policing yourself and shutting yourself down and saying, that's not real, man, you didn't really see that, man, this is crazy, man, something's wrong with you, man, and then you got that going on in your mind. I'm talking about for people who have seen things. Mm-hmm. This is like a war right there. That's the biggest war, because it's one being saying you didn't see it, you really didn't see it, and then another being that's saying, man, I know what I saw. And remember, if you let the being that is trying to convince you that you didn't see it win, it's a mighty blow to your spirit, because now you have to go against truth. Because you know you saw it, but now you're having to believe that you didn't see it for whatever reason. You see what I mean? And this is deep stuff that goes on in a person's consciousness if you're even starting to get into the meat of what spirituality really is. And so, this is the complete metamorphosis of it. I've met people now that have said, man, older men that said, man, what you did, that's what people end up in the crazy house for. Like, no one actually goes complete to that process without and ever balances out. And look at you. You have a wife. You have a child. You're successful. Wow, man, this is a big thing. So I don't expect it even now personally with a lot of people to actually click until I move into this next stage of action. Because I can show people beyond anything, like visually, what's going on here, and I can release the information that's necessary for that all to make sense, even from a scientific level. And so what happens is that it's just that's the end of time. And so some people would think that, well, how could that be possible? I shouldn't even know anybody that's capable of doing that. All of this, all these doubts, and all I've done is I've hacked my own system, and I've taken off all the governors. And this has happened through a process, though. It's like, because you don't just see all of a sudden the other realm a little bit, or you can actually read a person's mind like a piece of paper, and then all of a sudden come back into the reality like la-di-da. And then guess what? No one around you, who are you going to end up finding that you can start even talking to? And this is what I think, that's why secret societies end up culling most of the individuals that even get in deeply into this stuff. You see what I mean? Because they don't have anywhere else to go. Who else is going to believe that they just saw, something run out of the room that actually went through the wall, or that they were in this other world and they were actually asleep in this one, but there, and it was real. Everything was so real. You could feel, you could touch it. Like there was even bugs on the ground. There was dirt. I talked to people, they gave me things that I know now. Like I'm extracting knowledge from other worlds that are applicable to this world. I'm talking about the real futuristic version of what Tesla was trying to do. Introduce the world to free energy for the humans, free energy for the body, or else there could be no compromise. And then what we're dealing with now in this world is the world after the treaty, because there was a war, and at the end of that war, the weaker states of consciousness lost. And this means when you lose a war, there's a treaty. And what is the stipulation to that treaty? You shall not use your power or even know about your power. Okay, they talk about these activities took place with what you're dealing with the larger pyramid in Amenti, which is basically what we call Lower Egypt. Okay, and Lower Egypt is the famous one now. That's where the pyramids are. Everyone says, oh, the pyramids, they think that's Upper Egypt. That's not upper, that's lower. That's the netherworld. That's Amenti. So if you look into the annuals, you'll find, for the ones who wrote this stuff, not all the different variations that came after it, because if someone's trying to philosophize with some ignorance anyway, what are you going to get from that? Right? So think about that. So what happens is that you find that the dweller was present. Okay, this is the name for the chthonic being that resides outside of time or in stasis, an inverted septagram. Okay, so what happens is that there was a situation where a being known as Thoth, or Thought, I'd like to call, which is synonymous with the moon and the ape, okay, or monkey, or the moon key, okay, basically hominids, but very advanced. Like I told you, if you divide the power by the number of them, then you can get the overarch, meaning how strong they are on the other dimension of consciousness. So hominids are extremely mathematical. So they don't actually function. Monkeys don't function on the same logic that we function on, which is really more like heart logic. Function on like numbers and shit. So what happens is that they were able to, through thought, develop like systems that were slight deviations from the perfection of nature. 365 versus 360. Basically, understanding the keys to time and how to create time, because all the other beings in the expanse was timeless. Nobody was feeling like they were going to die. None of that was going on in the universe, right? That's like a shadow cast over the universe, like the lady said, the dark shadow that cast over the water. Oh, shit. Something's about to happen. Who's pulling in with this big-ass craft? Oh, no, it's Jehovah in the moon again. And the lords from Orion, you know, you start connecting it all. It's the same thing that comes into the, like, what is that, the series, Star, what is it, Star, it's the one that's similar to, geez, why can't I remember it right now? But anyway.
Star Wars?
No, it's like Stargate. So the Stargate series, okay, they really give it a little bit there, but at least enough to explain to you what can just happen if something more advanced comes to a less, or so-called conceiving less planets. Meaning that what happens if a being that does have a little bit more future tech comes along and doesn't want to give it to you and offer it to you to help you, but wants to enslave you with it, okay? Is that any different than computers? Is that any different than any? This is happening now. That's why I was saying that we're on top of this empire, and this empire is running its rule indefinitely. It's running its golden age indefinitely. It's tied the circle, it's tied a coil into a circle. And I'll make it very simple because this may sound like a riddle. But basically, what kings are, or Khan, which is synonymous with queen and Cohen, so it's a male-female. Like what you kind of saw in the other movie where there's a male-female pharaoh, the guy who plays on 300 now. And so what happens is that in this system, and geez, I had to take a moment here because I'm just need to take a moment here because I kind of went so deep into it and I was seeing it and then trying to translate it back. If people would understand, the most difficult thing about this is bringing it into English. English is like stuffing an elephant into a straw. Because what I'm actually doing, if people will understand, is I don't have to necessarily access this kind of information for myself. I don't need this kind of information to convince me of who I am and what went on, etc. But if other people need it, then I have the ability to go and extract the information. So what I do is I go down this tube, because part of the question earlier in this is how I'm capable of, where's my information come from?
Yeah.
And it comes from merging two chakras that make everything like a tube. And then all you do is identify the tubes. And this looks just like a star field. It looks like, well, you see it as dots. But instead, in this 3D vision, it looks like tubes with light coming out the tips of them. Then I can see the tube that's related to what I'm looking for, and I go into the tube. And then from that, I can actually see the reality. It's actually a visual thing. But it's all streaming in real time. That's the best way to put it. So what happens is that there's one side of the brain that just shuts this stuff off. It's basically when you think. That's why thought is, to get us back around to what we were originally talking about, thought is dangerous. Because when you think, it shuts down, the tube closes. You can't even see, like you forget. And then you actually are trying to find the tube again amongst what just looks like darkness, right? This is what happens as you're trying to communicate. I'll just put it like that. So what happened is that if you read the Emerald Tablets, what you'll see is that Thoth actually was the one that created the big prism or the big prison out in Egypt. That Thoth was the one that actually created the languages that we're using now, because previously there wasn't these kind of languages. Everyone was using like the frontal lobe to talk. Like there was no communication. There was even no need for mouths. Okay? And this is another secret. If you need to understand what the human really is the human's a composite being. Right here alone is one complete body. Down here, there's another body. They show you this in phi geometry, that you can find the different parts of the body, and different parts of the body are developed differently, or they're on a different stage of consciousness. But let me show you just this, that the more advanced stages of the body have some kind of generative principle, meaning they can actually create some kind of life, and everyone's familiar with that. That's their genitals, right? But there's another one on your body, and you are totally unaware of it because you haven't realized yet that your body is separate bodies. And this is your tongue. That your tongue, if you consider that this is a whole body, your tongue is actually positioned where your generative principle would be, right? Right. Not only that, when you turn the mouth to the side, it actually looks more like some kind of vagina than anything. And it's because that we can bring life into worlds through different exponents, I guess would be the thing. We could use our generative principle down here, or we can use the one up here. Yeah. But then there's another one. There's actually quite a few. There's another one at least coming from the head, and this is another way to project and to build things. So what I wanted to explain is that all of these have to do with more superior systems versus inferior systems. So then if you look at the head then and you see that, okay, seeing is supreme in a sense to the heights of communication. And right next to it is the ears. So the seeing and the ears are one of the most supreme forms of communication. One communication system down is smelling. The sense that, and also there's another sense thing that goes on with the nose. It doesn't just smell, but it can actually sense danger. That's what dogs are using, and that's what even we are using with the major part of our instincts. Okay, so that's another one. Now, the most lowest on the totem pole though is who? The mouth. Yeah. So using the mouth as a primary form of communication and a way of transferring energy, you're not using a superior system. So that's the system of Thoth. Okay? What Thoth did was Thoth put everyone on an inferior system. This is the secret to the key of the Ankh. Because they know also that Thoth kind of relates a little bit to Atrahasis, and Atrahasis, black genius, actually relates also to Hotep, carrying that key around, right? And what that key is, or that Ankh, is a composite of a circle, of course, and we talked about what circle is and how it traps in time, and a T, or a square, or basically also that same thing as a cross for Christians. And that these two symbols, the symbol of the circle and the symbol of the cross, are the most dominant symbols in any religion. Because Thoth carries the key to all religions. It's a master key, though. And what this master key triumphs over all of the different systems that broke off from either the symbol of the sword or the symbol of the circle. So, and both of these symbols being synonymous with death. Now, let me show you what circle is. Now, this word "sir" actually means snake. That's where we get the word "sar" from. All you have to do is just take the word "sr" and then you take the letters "sr" and then you put the vowel in between. Because in all these languages, because they're Kabbalistic, they don't have vowels. Okay, so this is this is a quick crash course of how to decipher what's going on in the language, if you may. So you have let's say with this word "sir" and how we want to prove that it's connected to snakes and serpents. Okay. Now, first thing you would do is you would remove the vowel. So in the case of "sir," we would remove the I, and then we would be just with "sr." Okay. Now, "sr" happens to be the abbreviation for senior, meaning the elder, the older one. Okay, that's in English, right? So now let's start putting the vowels back into "sr." We'll start with A. We get to the word "sar," S-A-R. Sar means snake, as in Sauron, who was known as the snake god in all religions. Look up Sar, it means snake. S-I-R. This gives us the word "sir." This is why the British term "yes, sir" means yes, snake, because they're already in the know about this. This goes back to the Rajas of them understanding this snake and its lordships over the earths. Okay? S-O-R, sore, which gives us the root of sorcerer. Also some kind of cutting agent. I'm sore, that hurt. Okay? And S-E-R gives us sir, as in serpent, right? As in snake. So this connects this S-R with serpent. Okay? So this is how you take apart, in a sense, the languages and find the codes and these kind of things. And so I guess the ultimate story of the metamorphosis of this snake, just to bring it full circle, and I'm not sure if the caller is still on the line, is that this snake became like a sheath for this planet, that it encompassed this planet, that it serves as the skin on this planet. And this is why they call it the rainbow snake, okay, or the rainbow. They always talk about the rainbow snake and the rainbow, because the rainbow snake is the aura, or the skin on a planet. It's a shining snake, but the snake also causes division, because it divides everything within it based on the frequencies, the colors, the spectrum, right? The snake has two purposes. It is a protector. That's why the pharaohs wore the snake on the head. This is because the snake's skin is shiny and shines, nothing from the outside is going to actually be able to penetrate it, generally. Just think about it. Like, let's say, for instance, we're inside of this, and look at it as a ball rather than a tube, please. But if you're inside of it, and it's got this shiny coat on it, that shiny coat is what's like your skin, keeping the infections from getting inside, unless there's a chink in the armor, right? And so what happens is that, but there's a double purpose, and this is why it's called serpent, as in the pentagram. It also makes a shell when it does this. And this shell can actually trap the beings that live inside of it. If they decide that they want to get out, how are you going to get out of the shell? If you put a hole in it, you're going to bring in all the stuff that's from the inside. So this is real talk. Like, people need to understand what the hell we're really dealing with here. You're inside of a bubble, and if you poke a hole in it, you'll let things come in that will infect the planet. But you want to leave. So how do you leave? It's a riddle. You collapse time. You have to be able to teleport from the inside to the outside. You're not going to ever get out there. Like this whole idea of them going in space shuttles, this is why they try to show everyone that crap. They're not going anywhere. You can't go outside with a space shuttle and pop out of anything. That's not even what's going on. That's an illusionary perspective of how the Matrix really works. It's inside. You have to go actually inside through your own star clusters. It looks like you're flying through keys. And then that's when you get off of the zigzag path. This means that the path that's all complex and confusing, and you don't know what you're doing, there's no experience involved, you're not really changing your body, you're not stopping eating, you're not doing anything that's really going to cause some change. This is the zigzag path. And so with a zigzag path, if you're looking down it like a tube, you can't see to the end of it. Like you can't even, actually you can't see the light in it, okay? But if you have a straight path, you can see the light, as they say, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. We're going to continue in a bit. Actually, Blog Talk stream is about to end in a couple of minutes, so we'll just quickly take one more caller. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, my light is super bright. I just need to cut the light down.
All right. So area code starting with 734. We're going to quickly take your call and see if we can answer, and we're going to end the call in a couple of minutes. Actually, 2 minutes. Blog Talk is going to end, but we're going to continue on YouTube live stream, and the URL is on our website, soulfreedom.org. You can go directly to YouTube live. We're streaming there, and I'm going to unmute area code 720. Yes, hi, 720. Go ahead, please.
Oh, no, I didn't push one. I'm just enjoying the show.
All right, great. Area code 408 again. Let's try. You there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead.
I just had a question for Sevan. It was just to explain the difference between Eastern and Western mysticism. Listen to a lot of Michael Cicero. He talks about not really affiliating with Eastern mysticism. So I just had a question for Sevan and his opinion on that, and why individuals in esoteric teaching don't really affiliate with Eastern teachings more than the Dravidians and such. But
for sure, and that kind of gets into.
All right, thank you. All right, go ahead.
What that gets into is the next part of the Thoth story, because remember, this story is really difficult to phase lock, but that basically that there was the creation of these different religions and customs, and that Thoth and the Atlanteans, which were really boatmen that had understood this priestcraft, began to bring this knowledge to different cultures, i.e. the culture of living and the culture of death. So you'll still see the symbols match up all the time with the Ankh. Either it's a circle or it's a cross. Either it's a curve or it's a straight line. It's as simple as that. And then so one culture is taught, especially if they're on the Western Hemisphere where the sun sets, they're taught one system, and then the other culture is taught another. And then as there keeps becoming the population increases, eventually all these forces will have no choice but to be close to each other. And that they will definitely come into some level of conflict, because they're actually, like, this is like a circle meets square. And so once this thing happens, though, that there's a birth from that. And so, the controllers, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is used to keeping systems going like this kind of way. Energy through conflict. It's the same energy through combustion, right? Which is the same thing that you see that the car is running on. That's combustive energy. So I believe that when you get into another stage of consciousness, you begin to use, let's say, magnetic energy more so in your states of consciousness. That's when you start really gliding into those worlds, and definitely gliding through this one. Here's the other thing about the interesting thing about Earth is that Earth contains an entire frequency spectrum. So realistically, you can get with individuals that are harmonized on extremely incredible frequencies. And it's important to not see frequency anymore as numbers, okay? Because numbers make you numb. And this is just like another one of the biggest games that I just uncovered, is that this whole frequency thing with numbers. Like, oh, this is 452 hertz, or this is 145 hertz. Now, there's a lot of power in those frequencies, right? But still, we have to realize that what frequency are you really playing? And the frequency that you're really playing is multiple frequencies at one time coming from your organs. But they're all working in harmonics to make one tone. So we can't even say that, oh, that tone is 17 hertz. It doesn't work like that. Like it's like several fibers all twined into one larger fiber. And then that's making it, what it is. And so if you're trying to label it and say, oh, that's 555.2 hertz, that's Thoth. Thoth was the God of that shit. And I just can't really stress it to people enough that I realize you're dealing with these beings that they deal with science, right? And science is trying to prove something that already exists. Science it acts like it doesn't have the tools and components to actually develop what it needs to develop, yet it has laboratories full of stuff that if I could show you right here on air right now some stuff that will confirm for you fully. Simple GDV device will confirm for you fully that we have this huge field around us, and it changes colors and everything, and it's all based on what we do. And a simple visual of that brings people along a little bit more about realizing that they are what they eat and they are what they think, right? But why isn't this thing at school? Why isn't that at work where you walk into class that everyone sees what kind of attitude you're dealing with just at that moment? Because we're all sharing that space. And if you don't want to share space, because we're always going to be together. Like, that's the other thing. People need to realize we're never going to be separate. So get rid of it. Get rid of the idea. The only thing that's in between us is space. Because other than that, we are biorhythmically collected. We're all in the same bubble together. You breathe the air, I may breathe it tomorrow. You sit in the seat, I may sit in it 2 years from now. We're all on top of each other, baby. So what happens here is that we come into the realization of that, and then we also realize our responsibility with what we need to do with this network. Because, you know, that's really what it's about. It's about taking it as it's yours. Do it, treat it like it's yours. And see, because remember, the circle, where some people think, oh, that's the highest level of knowledge, the circle, blah, blah, blah. The closed circle teaches people that when you throw something away, that it goes away. It goes into a hole. The hole's the abyss. There's nothing there. Like it just goes away. But that's not true. When you throw something in the trash, it goes to the landfill. Now it's in our ocean. It doesn't go away. But when you teach people the concept of the zero, they believe that things go away. It's a whole opposite spectrum with those who learn with the straight line. You see what I mean? So this is how they divide the world, to answer the gentleman's question. One say this consciousness, he's on 0. Other one's on 1. Look at the 0. It's curved, then a 1, right? So those are the two dualistic planes, the 0 and the 1. Where you need to be is the secret that I was explaining with the symbol of the 1. 1 as a symbol. This is when you take this 1, right? There's my finger. And then you turn it like this, because that's three-dimensional. And then you'll see a circle right there. And then you'll also see that this is a tube. So what this unlocks is that the symbol of the 1 actually contains the symbol of the 0 within it, meaning that the 1 and the 0 are never separate. And some people will get this and some people won't, but this is the key to everything. Once you realize that the Eastern and the Western are both either right or both wrong, depending upon what conclusion you want to come to, that's when they collapse. You bring them together. You basically create the heart symbol. That's when you really start to show some love. Because other than that, as long as you're dividing and splitting it all up, we already know what that's going to do. And that's why I said we get innovative. We start creating things despite what everyone else is talking about, and everyone's in fear, and they're going to kill you for this and blah, blah. Look, you are policing yourself. Go grab something like a 3D printer and start manufacturing free energy devices and get vortex implosion going on to get rid of negative door like Rife taught you. Go back on Tesla's videos and bring back out the static electric or pranic electric generators and bring those back out and reinvent those. I don't have time to do all of this. My ideas are open source. I give you my ideas. Like, they're not mine. Shoot. And this is the other thing. This is another major key, because I think I'm just going to air. Maybe I'll come on the show tomorrow, but maybe I may not. But because I may re-air this tomorrow. I'm even going to ask you first, but I just feel like there's going to be so much in this show. But oh man, let's just go ahead. Let me just take another question. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna air it tomorrow, because I'm trying to not talk about everything from tomorrow today.
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, I think the Blog Talk, I don't know if I can still take those callers in. Let me try to do that, because it says the recording.
If they called in, they'll still be accessible.
All right, so let's try to do that. Harmony of Being, I think last time we couldn't get that person online, so let me unmute Harmony of Being, and let's see. Yeah. Yeah.
Tomorrow's a new day, right? There's going to be more to do. So please.
Sure.
Yeah,
and what's your name again?
This is Mike, guys, Inspired Dreaming.
All right, great.
If
Okay. Thanks a lot. All right. Talk to you later, Mike. We'll take the next caller. So we have another caller waiting. Actually, before we take the next caller in, I had one question here. Or actually, let's go ahead. There have been people waiting. So it's area code 720. Before I do take that call, I wanted to also say that we'll be having these calls for another, I think, 3 or 4 more calls like this. So if anybody hasn't gotten their questions answered, we haven't decided the date yet, but we're gonna post the date soon. So we probably have 3 more shows because I had a list of questions and they haven't been aired yet. But I will take the next caller in area code 720. I don't know if we took that person on. Let's go ahead and try. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's me again. I didn't press 1.
All right.
I'm listening.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Sure, thank you. And then, okay, I had a question about the moon. So you mentioned, and I know David Icke talks about that, and you talk about that too, how moon filters the information out from the rest of the universe before it comes to us. So can you tell us a little bit about how moon has been kind of hacked or hijacked and how it's affecting us physically, mentally, and spiritually?
Sure. You know, many people have their notions about the moon because now it's just like it's gotten so crazy. Like, you know, obviously some people say it's hollow, some say it's an artificial body, some say that it was a ship. You know, and just from what I understand about it, from what I feel, like, because that would be where everyone needs to smack themselves for a minute and say, okay, well, what do you feel? And you could tell the moon is magnetic, that's for sure, because especially if you have that kind of energy going inside of you, like a lot of pranic and a lot of good fluids going on in your body, you feel this rise of energy as the moon starts to get full. You also feel this higher level of conductivity, right? So we can automatically say that the moon is adjusting energies then, because when it's on the other waning side, it depends on also your state of consciousness, but it doesn't seem to be that same kind of energy going on. And in fact, you can see that exhibited in nature, where when the waning sides of the cycle of the moon, certain crops and things just won't grow. They need to wait until it gets full again and they start growing. So this means that it's exercising some level of control. Okay? It's as simple as that. And that's why it would start to be called the Lord. Because anyone that exercises control was known as a lord. But if this being was not so far out in the galaxy, meaning that the moon is actually rather close compared to the next celestial body. So it seems like, in a sense, the moon is taking a personal interest with what's going on Earth. So I'm just telling you how these people began to realize exactly what the relationship with the moon and the Earth really was. And then maybe something that happened later on when the Russians, or the Orthodox, where the Orthodox Catholicism comes from, went to the moon and whatever they did there. So basically, in a nutshell, we find that the moon is very useful to especially reproduction of livestock. And this is actually why there's a big connection with cows, which is what in the ancient times that people really wanted more of than anything, the bovids and the auroch, because that was going to give you meat, that was going to give you cheese, that was going to give you that was going to give you the horn, that was going to give you all sorts of different things, the coat, you know, and all those things, just like the buffalo to the Indian people, were very important to this specific people during this time. And so what I believe personally is that there seems to be some very uncanny connection with some type of hybridized being that consists of somewhat of a body of a bull and then a body of a man. And this being the covenant of some sort that took place between our world and some beings that served as like wombs for our worlds. And to make this very clear, we're mammals.
Okay, we're not reptiles. So there's a reason for that. The womb we chose to go through was through a mammalian womb. So this means that whatever animal per se is giving off the most milk, we're probably going to be connected to, because that's also what's in the breast of a woman. So that's really easy to see that the cow was, the major connection with the milk for, people. And if you look in the ancient writings, they show you all of this. They show you these connections between people and these animals, and that later on that connection was broke apart. And that's what you can call civilization. That's when there was a separation between the beings who were like appearing in physical human bodies versus the hybrids, if you may. And I may have get lost in this topic a little bit right now, but just because being on the line for so long, and also talking about something that's rather complex to get across to people so they really understand it. But to understand what the moon first was, is the moon had everything to do with generation and the sexual principle of the earth, and that the moon was known to be very abundant, and it was known to show up in all types of forms, like sometimes in forms of animals, sometimes in forms of men, meaning that the actual emanations coming from the moon. And this actually gives us the story of angels, to tell you the truth. Like, what people know as angels were mostly entities that came from the sphere of the moon. So this is where there starts to become some kind of extraterrestrial connection in most people's mind, because they see that these beings had come from another star system themselves. And this is why they became known as the archons, or the lords of the earth, because they were like basically really close to us. They controlled a lot of the reproduction of especially bacteria. This is a major thing for human beings, because with candida and all these different things inside of us, all these microorganisms, the moon becomes the main instrumental tool used to allow those organisms to increase and decrease in your system. And so thus that really has everything to do with your frequency. And so we have a video, it's called The Human Resistance, where all this stuff is really detailed, because it's quite a complex topic, because you're getting into different parts of time. Even when there were glyphs that were taken from Earth to the moon by the order of the dweller, meaning that again, there's some being that's still kind of hanging outside of time, vampiring things, had ordered the priesthood, Kohanim, the ones who worked the craft, which is a ship, to actually take the glyphs that it carved from its laser, which is basically Solomon Shamir, that it cuts into crystals these weird symbols. And then it had these obelisks taken to the moon, so that way that when the sunlight shines on the moon, and all these are on the side of the moon that you can't see, then the light goes right into the obelisk and then sprays out this program. And this is, I'm taking you so deep in the fringe, they may just cut the conversation off. But basically, where I'm at is I see this code running. When you're using the third eye, you see this code running through everyone. You see these codes. And I'm starting to realize, especially as more as I understand what's going on, the more I'm able to see, I'm starting to realize that this is a program, and it's actually programmed over the top of their original programming. And this would also be very synonymous with another atmosphere basically created outside of our Earth, right? And this atmosphere was served like a sky window. You could basically do the same thing you do in the laboratory. Do you remember when I keep saying that the whole problem is if you punch a hole through the atmosphere, you can break the canopy and all the water falls and then it's over. Everyone goes to the next thing. So to avoid doing that, which is what they don't want to do. See, some people think they want these malevolent forces want to destroy the world. Oh, no, then they want this thing jam-packed full, because that's going to be more energy, right?
Yeah, right.
But in order to keep these transmissions going on and keep their communication going on, which is leaving this sphere, you would have to create some kind of artificial bubble or grid that you could open. You could open one part and keep another part closed. Go inside, have that part closed, and then that part open. So that way you never expose the actual reality, the petri dish, to any external, any kind of external energies, because these external energies this would be very similar to a hole in the sky, that you start seeing certain things out there, and this all of a sudden, not only from an etheric level and a feeling of what you're feeling coming from out there, but just from a visual level alone, you realize that shit, there's something out there. So all of your senses are being bombarded at once that there's something even more vast than what's going on Earth. And so to prevent that, you need to create like a cloak, something that even when you open it and even when you're doing things up there, nobody can see it. And so this can be done, and I know 100% it can be done. I've seen this. And it's basically, it's how the dream is being programmed. And that's what I was getting into earlier. And this is derma, or which means skin in Latin. This is dream programming. It's when you basically program the light codes, because all of this is still light. That's what we need to understand. The highest level of energy of energetics of this looks like a light. So, and then the only thing that's different about these lights is that they're different shapes, and they're different color frequencies, right? But this is programming. So if you know how to build something or create something that emits that, which is a simple craft, this is not even complex. Crystals are a key component to this. And then from that, just some kind of energy that can emit through it, like mainly a sun. And what that does is it sprays out a program or a frequency all over everything. And then so you'll find that if the beings that are being subject to that don't have the shine in themselves, like they can't like repel it. And this is the easiest way to explain it. This is why the stronger states of consciousness have a tendency to win. Notice now, trying to get some high-level knowledge is very rare right now. All you get is Jay-Z and all these idiots. I mean, it's just gone crazy. Nobody's sharing knowledge. All they're doing is the same thing over and over and over again. The reason why I say an idiot is because only an idiot does the same thing over and over and over again. If you look at my conversations, I constantly keep progressing with knowledge and thought, because that's how it's going to work. You're going to keep coming into new things. You're going to keep expanding, and it's never going to stop. But someone who may be into some level of ignorance is going to keep being redundant about something. They're going to keep having the same story. Oh, the Anunnaki are going to come for us. And then when they land their ships in the gold-facey giggies, they come here and then they bring their future tech with them, and then they're going to emancipate the Earth because they're going to get rid of the negative forces. And remember, the people who created these stories also created Capcom. They also created the comic books, Marvel. They created all of that as far as from a literal level, like what they can write, right? So that's why I was saying the popes and the poets are connected. Shakespeare connected, but they've advanced of men with very great creativity in order to ensnare less creative beings. So instead of you as the centralized character, because there's always one play here, instead of you as the centralized character, there's always somebody else, whether it's God or whether it's Hercules or whether it's Spider-Man. It's just not you, right? And so that's just the whole game with this. The game is to keep everyone pacified, cool, basically not hot, and soaked in this water, because this is a womb. So there's water. How much water is in here now? Some people say, well, what are you talking about? I pour me a glass of water. No, that's density of water. Let's go get a dehumidifier and put it in your room and leave it running for an hour. And then there's going to be tons of water in there. So where do you think that water is coming from? It's coming right from your atmosphere. So you're underwater now. So that's the other thing. Those who go out, they automatically light up. If your stuff is really, really on point, what happens is it's like Earth is just keeping you cool. The moment you break out of the envelope, you basically go supernova. And this is why it's also so difficult to come back from supernova. So if you also want to know what happens with a lot of the crazy people, is they go supernova and they never come back. They can't actually connect back with this consciousness. You see? And that's why the bridge walkers and the bodhisattvas are so important. They're like the mothers and fathers of the dimensions, because they're the ones that have gained some ability to be able to walk between the planes, the spaces within the spaces. And that's why we're saying that the human being shows that in its magnificent state, it is actually a being that is capable of doing that, meaning that That is our real purpose. We were created to be bridge walkers, to actually walk in two planes at one time. That's the equipment that we're sitting on, for whether you want to believe it or not. And so this means that, and that's why anytime you want to know what the template is for a planet, you always look at whatever it is that's supposed to be its highest being. Okay, like whatever, and that will always control how far people really get, is what they think to be the highest. And that's why we are totally re-engineering the idea of what the supreme being is thus far, and cutting this idea that there's some kind of disconnection, and then reinstalling, which basically doesn't even need to be reinstalled, it's already there, this connection with everyone realizing that you are the supreme being. And then after that starts to sit in for a while, though, because it's a lot to take. Some people think it's like, oh, it's an ego or too much of a compliment. But when you really sit down in it, especially if you got some kids, you start realizing that, man, I'm responsible for actually really taking this thing to a next level, but I got to be innovative. Don't go be silly. Don't go run down there and spend all your time on the corner yelling out to everyone something that they're not going to comprehend and think you're crazy. Man, get so advanced. Like I said, go and you see this whole thing now with this internet and all this information, seize the data. Go through the annual so you can answer all the what's, whens, whys, wheres, and hows of your own wilderness and forest of your brain. And then come and seat into yourself. You have your brothers and sisters here. The resistance is strong. AstroQuest is up. Realm Dynamics is on the sphere. So we have many different factions for an individual to, it's already been done. It doesn't matter what happens to me. That's how it was initially set up. But guess what? We're going to the next level. Like, we're not even, look, all the cards go back in. And you know, Lokesh, you're a major part of this. Like, creating the network that's open source spirituality, it's actually not even a network. It crashes any ideas of networks. It brings in the real concept of that affiliation is the key to everything. That's what's going to straighten everyone out. And then that we can keep gliding into this, because you will be so rapidly strong. Shoot, it's already happening. But what you will be doing is linking into an organism that has an ethereal energetic system, not just a physical energetic system, meaning that when you go get a job, per se, because that's closed source, you're not their family. They don't treat you like family. You don't sleep there. Like, it doesn't work like that, and that's the disconnection. So imagine when real firms, real foundations start coming up that have it's like family, and it's family in there. Everyone is on a frequency. Everyone has the best interest of the other individual in mind, because that is affecting their performance. And that is also affecting their status and integrity of affiliation, meaning that if we watch anything, let us not watch God in the sky. Let us watch the gods around us and each other. And so this is the thing. And by all means, you know, it's going forward. Like, this is not something that I'm proclaiming and what we got to do. We got to do. This is what you can do and what you get to do. But whether you want to do it or not is up to you. We're already at it. And like I said, we've gotten innovative. So don't be surprised if I throw out something in the room and it sucks all of the negative energies inside of it, and then I just deal with them later. But don't be surprised if it was done with devices that were so damn simple, it actually makes you realize that all science is stupid. Just as man's knowledge is foolishness to God's, as they say in the Bible. This means that with this distorted state of mind, that's why I'm saying, if something was distorted and ignorant in the beginning, and then you go and reinterpret it, what can you really reinterpret it into? So with this state of mind that we've been living in for the last thousands of years, the byproduct of that is the books and the knowledge that we have around us. So we have to be very careful to how much of that stuff we actually even adapt. And so when we go into this next level of things, we have to also be willing to step back into our seat as real creators, because we can create babies. We make ideas, and then we make stuff happen. That's just what we do. So those are facts. So now that we're ready to step into this next system of creation within ourselves, then you see what I mean? You come to the logical conclusions of what you need to do. And also remember, you are what you eat. If you're still munching down on slowed down plasma, it's going to affect you. Like, what blood is it slowed down plasma. Even the blood within our veins is only there because we're not the shining one. When you're shine, you can't hold blood. Blood turns into something else. It turns into this light stuff. That's the only expression that we have for it, is it's full spectrum light. This is like the max of what we're able to see and interpret is beyond a certain wavelength. Now we're moving beyond that wavelength, and then we're also seeing how what we're creating is going to be working with this world. And so that's what the bridge part is. It's about having these massive ideas, but also knowing at the end of the day how you're going to have to get back in front of the computer, or how you're going to have to get on that phone, or how you're going to have to get in these streets or whatever to make it happen. Because that's what a bridge really is. And I'll say this and I'll be done with it, and we can take some more questions. Think about it. It's not, okay, actually don't think about it, because that's what Thoth does. Thoth thinks about being the bridge, okay? Never realizing that actually being the bridge is a physical thing. It means that you're actually going to be in places and be doing things that allows you to take someone or something from one state of consciousness across to the other side. Because you have to do that because you're this physical body. Because remember, the beings that you really are don't have physical bodies. That's why you're the bridge. You see the role? Like, the role is it's really intense, because you're the one they say, well, you're going to take the physical body. Imagine just then a whole high council of wise elders, right? And here you come, the young one, right? But you got your integrity straight and you're ready to go into this. They're going to definitely use you as a conduit to bring the massive levels of knowledge. But guess what? There's one clause: through your body. See, because everyone else is going to remain in the high council. You're going to be the one that's going into the crucible. So understand, a bodhisattva was a Mashiach. It was a Messiah. It is the bridge walker, the one who actually decides that they're going to go into the crucifixion. And then likes it. This is another thing. That's why the statement was made. I can take this thing up and take it down anytime I want. This means that you actually are not afraid of death. It doesn't strike you as something that is going to end everything. Actually, it more feels like a process where you're like going to take a shower and renew yourself, right? So this death thing actually becomes like this renewal thing, and there's no loss. So this is what I was talking about when building the projections of, you don't want to get to that point one day and you be laying on that bed and then the physical vessel then gave up because you done fed it with too much of the slowed down plasma, and then you're all scared and then you're trying to figure out if you're going to turn back to the dominion, meaning your old religion. Remember, what happens to everyone, especially if you've been involved in a religion, is when you get to that point, if you haven't waxed strong, and that's why now is the time to do it. Now is the time to get the information and fully start working with yourself about what you believe, not later on. Because later on, when you're weak, and it talks about this, if you get weak, this means if you start giving off less light, and people need to realize this is a very serious thing. When you start giving off less light, this is called aging to us, more things move closer to you. Because remember, look what you're dealing with. I already told you that there's viruses and stuff running around, and this is why most people get sick when they get older, because it's their immune system. Look what's happening on a spiritual level. As they're getting older, especially if they're not practicing energetics and cultivation, where the other body is now fully developed. See, what's supposed to happen is, when you get older in this body, the other body is actually getting more towards the time of being birthed. So you actually have a brand new body to already go into if you're developing this properly. But if you don't, because that's where you're actually drawing your energy from now, this body. So that's why you want to push as much into your spiritual body and not get vampired all the time from other different energies, pulling all your spirit body out of you, right? Taking your gong, they call it. So what happens is that, so what happens is that when you get older, that this light that you're giving off, the one that I keep explaining to you that's coming from your skin, okay, that's keeping organisms from invading you, right? It starts to go out. It starts to get dimmer, especially if you've been introduced to the concept of death, the culture of death, which is the culture of zero. That's the culture of the cipher, or the cipher, or the circle. We talked about this earlier. So you think it's going to be the end, you get into this depressed state, and you start feeling sicker and sicker. And what's really happening is these other organisms are moving in on you. They're starting to eat up your light and eat certain parts of your light because they're light eaters. So this is a big thing. It's serious. This should keep you on your toes. Like, I don't tell people this stuff to actually scare them. I tell you, man, stay on your stuff. Sometimes this could be like a Freddy Krueger movie. Don't go to sleep. Like, fucking stay awake right now. Like, this is not the time. And if you've been doing anything else, if you're clear enough in your mind right now to hear where I'm coming from, if you've been doing anything else and you've been waiting on that time to get ready to get yourself together, I'm telling you, this thing is ready now. This is it. I've been working all of my life, probably aeons for this particular moment. I know that if I do not do it this time, what actually happens because of the parallax and the projections that we're in, you don't actually come back into another world where you remember this again. You actually kind of loop back to beginning again. And remember, people that I'm telling you about this, get this now, because there's going to be all sorts of stuff that's going to try to keep you from overheating, keep you from basically birthing. But birth now, and you'll make it. It's real. I can't say it enough, and it's only because words can do nothing to express it. Words do not give you experiences. Mm-hmm. And then further, it even it's divided more when we say it over one of these things, because this is a electronic carrier. Mm-hmm. So let me show you how the difference in systems, just like I was talking to you about the head and how these are different in systems. Like if I'm sitting right next to someone and I'm talking, it is still more powerful than if I'm talking to them over a phone or something. But that talking is still, you see what I mean? There's different levels of this. And so proximity and decreasing the space on the biorhythmic planes, and I don't want to make this sound complex, but basically decreasing the space between you and the ones that are harmonic inside taps you into the energy field that is necessary to power you up and to keep you in synchronicity with everything that you need to experience. Then you don't actually have nothing to worry about. Like there's no worry. You're kind of out of that whole field.
Right. So go organic. I think that what I'm getting from you is more organic as we can get, more.
Yeah, it's a stair-stepping process, and we talked about this on many conversations, so I definitely won't get into it now, but realistically, start somewhere, even if it's junk food vegetarian. You just have to remember the actions, and the same thing that's doing, when you judge or when you decide, then you're going to be judged or something's going to decide for you, and this is not something, this system can work in your favor. Some people always listen to that kind of stuff, and they're like, oh my goodness, that means if I do something wrong, something bad's going to happen to me. Why do people think like that all the time? Why is it not, that means if I actually do something massive, then I'm definitely going to get the result of that massiveness, probably around the time that the full moon comes. And this is where, that's where, it's just a simple switch. Like in reality, like it's just a simple switch in state of consciousness. It's like where you stop seeing. And this is what does it. These kind of conversations, these kind of talks, because guess where the power is coming from? Together. See, when we're together, like the more that we talk, the more that we build on this, the more that we start making stuff happen, the more that things happen, everybody starts getting hype. And guess what? Because it's open source, everyone's also benefiting off of it. Meaning that it's not designed, this is not a charity. Like we're the most intelligent people in the universe right now. You think we're going to be sitting back here struggling from any energetic level? Like should I be over here sleepy and tired? I need to be on my fringe then trying to figure out how I'm going to make me some spagyric or something. If you have an issue, that's what we're talking about. Let's deal with it. Put it in the think tank, and the think tank brings out the solutions. But we're going to have to get a lot stronger, because there's a lot of people that are missing the connection. Mm-hmm. That's what I'll say. As a bridge, what happens where the areas where there's no bridge? They didn't carpet bomb their bridge. That's the states of consciousness over there, right? And this is the key part of the conversation. As a bridge walker, or you're actually the bridge, right? So over there's like this village, and they bombed out the village. There's only children left there, and then they're all like in a state of consciousness where they can't be but like children. They don't know where to go. So their bridge is bombed down. Who's going to come and be the bridge? Right? And then when you land, because as a bridge, you have to build yourself to the other side. When you land, you're going to deal with hostile forces at first. They always talk about this, that when another stage of consciousness goes over to another stage of consciousness, even if the one state of consciousness is benevolent, expect a war. Because now it's just all about what kind of quote-unquote weapons are you using. Are you using the love gun? You see what I mean? Like, there are ways to smooth out the rough edges of what the reality is done with someone through magnetic buffering and that kind of energy. That's when they break down and they cry. You see, that's the experience, my good friend. That's when you know you're really with a master. It's like the entire atmosphere has so much empathy and compassion, you just start crying. They be like, what's wrong with him? Be like, don't worry, his shield's breaking. The shell's breaking. And don't worry, he's safe. See, because what happens is that when people, the reason why they use the shell, the reason why they use the pentagram, the reason why they use their fire or their fight is because they're tired of being hurt. You see what I mean? So this is also a great expenditure of their energy. So what happens is they're not allowed to use their energy to bring brilliance, instead bring burning. What happens is that burns the person out. But remember, like, this is when you go into somewhere and you can't even express yourself to people because you know people take advantage of who you are. They won't even understand who you are. You're trying to give them your secret name, your amen, your tone, your vibration, and they ain't even feeling it. They're trying to put you back into Jack and John. You see what I mean? A number, 2, 2, 3, 5. You see? So they're trying to collapse a person back into that. We can't live in that. So here's what it is. And that's why I said I'm back, or forward, as I say. You will eventually die here anyway, right? Peep the game. This is just wake up for one moment. With them doing this to your ilk, your children, teaching them all this kind of stuff, your children is you're going to keep reincarnating back into those vessels. They're going to keep dumbing them out. Then you're going to be more and more trapped, right? So it's going to be a slow death, though. This is the problem with this kind of death. It doesn't end, okay? So we either have that option, or to, while still in our vigor, and this is, I'm talking to the men out there, and that's not a man, I'm talking about mapa, meaning the woman that actually has to be a man because the man has failed, okay? If to step into that role, those are the people who I'm talking to this week. You see what I mean? That's the frequency that I'm on. Be a father for this planet and bring your fire. Let your fire go into your mind and let it take you to your next stage of your innovation and what you really need to do for this planetary system. Accept it as yours. Don't be trying to run off nowhere, because you're going to run in a circle. Everything is a circle, no matter what. If a person takes off really fast in one direction and I start walking very slow in the other direction, we'll eventually meet each other again, because we're on a cycle. So the best thing to do is to break the chain. And that's what this is about. This circle, this is a big decision for us. Like, I'm taking people right on the truths on top of everything that's being determined for this planet right now. But what it's about is that when we make the decision to go beyond, remember, it's just like that great awakening that I had 4 or 5 years ago. The energetics are so high, you're just trying to remain stable. But one thing that I realized is that if I had someone in the room with me, even after that knew what was going on, I wouldn't have lost as much power as I did in doubt. Meaning that many people wake up and then your powers and your abilities are in full form. It's only when other people start to tell you, man, that doesn't even, you don't have that kind of power, man. You don't know anything. You're trying to read my mind. You don't. And then your doubt starts to suppress the ability. It's fear. It closes the chakra again. So now it doesn't work. Okay. So when you come out of an awakening, you got a bunch of people around you that are actually trying to basically put you back to sleep. That's just how it works, right? And then so it's a major thing if you wake up all of a sudden and then you have all these other people around you that are awake. You don't go back to sleep. In fact, you go into a greater stage of awakening. Like whoever said the awakening was just one thing. Every day I seem to awaken to a greater stage of this consciousness. You know what I mean? As it bakes, because you got to realize once you get the right wheels going on in the mind, you can think you're asleep and the wheels are still turning, and you wake up in the morning and there's just there's basically like a dossier for you, a folder of last night's information gathered. Meaning that's how our mind really can work. It gets to a point where once you have certain levels of data, around 2 o'clock in the morning, you just start figuring everything out. And you're still kind of asleep. And then by the time you wake up, 9, 10 o'clock, you start having these aha moments. Like you figuring out all the connections with the Sphinx and the pyramids and Thoth and the apes and the monkeys and the moon and the bacteria and the chakras and the gems and the Jews and the jewels and the jewelry and the judgment, the division, the diamonds, the demons, all of that stuff just starts to be like, and you're in the zone because it collapses itself, but you're still here. So that's why I'm saying, if you know all this, I get this sometimes, if you know all this, then why are you still here? I'm here because I know all of this. Like, that's what being present means.
In both the words at the same time, like, you can be like in both worlds at the same time, right? It's hard for people to do that. That's what.
Yeah, but they do it every day though, right? Like at night, they jump off out of this body and they go into this derma, dream, auric skin. Look, they even got you in there. Okay, that was the thing. Here's the last thing I need to tell you because it's about to be, I guess we're getting towards the last 30 minutes or whatever, but here's one of the keys. What happens is then if you identify with this Jack, James, John, whoever, right, this thump of vibration that you really are not, that's only a small percentage of who you really are. What happens is you identify with the eidolon, and that is actually the archonic side of yourself. So then what occurs is that because others are worshiping archons, meaning worshiping eidolons and ideas of other people, they can pull you into their dreams. Okay? And this is a big thing. Like if someone says, hey, man, I saw you last night, man, you gave me this knowledge. That's great. But what happens when someone says, I saw you last night, we got into this fight, man, and you shot me? That's not so great. But then that's when but then there's always one that you accept and there's one that you deny, right? I saw you last night, you were great. Yes, that was me. I saw you last night and you were terrible. That wasn't me. You got to check yourself. You see what I mean? So, but what's really happening? What's really happening is that the eidolon, especially the stronger the eidolon becomes for the individual, functions like its own vehicle. This is the idea of who everyone thinks you are, because they don't really know who you are. Especially if you don't know who you are, how is everyone else going to know? If you don't know your Amen or your name, how is everyone else going to know your name? The only ones that really know are like your mother. You see what I mean? Because they know who you really are. Like they've seen all the phases, so it's a feeling to them. It's not a name. Okay. So what I'm saying is that. Anyway, it's so difficult to explain it in English, but I'll get it out here in just a moment. But I was talking about the key to the whole thing. Okay, there it is. Okay, so what happens here is then if you start doing it, if you start identifying with James, and then you start identifying with the person that's in the mirror, and I'm only talking to myself, right? Then that eidolon has more control over you, especially what people do with it in the dream world, and even what sorcerers may do with it, and even what the exchequer may do with it, and what other papers that have your name on it may do with it. So if you start thinking, this is my signature, this is my face, this is my name, everywhere that imprint is, even in the dream worlds of individuals' minds that are entwining you, it actually affects you the more you believe in it, okay? But the more you identify with it is what I'm saying. I'm not talking about morale. I'm talking about identifying with Earth creature, meaning basically 1/billionth of who you are, okay? Because what happens is that when you get into this next stage of consciousness, it only comes about through this method when you don't identify with this limited character that everyone has wrapped up in a web like a spider. And it's because anyone can be a witch and a warlock. These are all W's. This is the zigzag. This is when a person actually sends out negative energy to you, especially when using some kind of spell or curse. What is a spell or curse? Spells and spelling are related. A curse is when someone cusses you out and says, you be MFing blah, blah, blah. That's a curse. Because the energy that they're carrying at that moment is really what's shifting and molding those words. So this means that anyone can be a part of that kind of energy. So just realize that in all of this, the more you identify with this very limited character, the more at a disadvantage you will be because you can get all your energy pulled down. That's what happens to a lot of, especially the actors and the stars. They're so identified with this whole character that they've created that everyone is tapped into it, and their life is just a disaster. But the less that you identify with the actual form itself, and the more you get into the real expanded side of yourself, even things that you don't even know are going on have less effect on you. So I'm not sure if I did the greatest job of explaining that, but I'll probably have to explain it again tomorrow. But just realize that that's where this control really is. It's a two-way street. The more you identify with the eidolon limited character, the more you can be controlled by the limited character in all the different aspects that it's been replicated itself in. There it is. Wow. That one you probably had to listen to twice, but there it is. Like that right there is a big key to this. That's the key to clear face.
Oh yeah, I probably have to listen to it 10 times before I wrap my head.
So where are we at now? I see that we're about 3 hours in.
Oh yeah, time.
Well, that was just us though, because we were on 20 minutes or 30 minutes earlier.
Yeah, we are still on Block Talk and we're still on Hangout, so
Nice.
Well,
Is
like
that
they
all the
say,
questions?
yeah, I think we pretty much got most of the people who were online. I see one person who dialed in later on, but I'm not sure it's the same person I talked to earlier. But we're gonna probably end in a few minutes.
Okay.
What we should probably do is just wrap it all up and tell our plans for the future. And you already talked about some of the projects you're doing, and as we mentioned earlier, we're going to have a few more talks later on because what we're trying to do is try to break it down for both beginners and advanced students, like people who are learning
Right.
these
And,
concepts.
and they can really see today's show as like a chapter list because each of the subjects that were brought up, we skirted over the top of them. Some people may even think that we even desecrated them a little bit because we didn't elaborate on them enough for people to get the balance that is necessary for them to see both sides of the situation. But to understand that there's always going to be two sides. Everything that happens on the planet has two sides. There's always what you think was the positive thing that occurred, and then there's always the other side of the negative thing that occurred. And when you gain this balanced ability, then you actually you can see both of them. And this is how
Right.
you also keep from burning up a lot of energy, because when you're polarized, when you're stuck on one pole, it's like your foot floored on the gas or your foot floored on the brake. You're either going somewhere really fast and burning up too much fuel, or you're just not going anywhere and you're indefinitely stuck. And so what we want to do is we want to have a balance between this, ease into this. That's the other thing. It's like there's a lot of healing because this is really like the core in a sense of this kind of work as far as what the resistance is delivering. We're preparing people in a sense to be sidereal warriors, individuals who know how to deal with situations that nobody can even see, right? So
Right.
there's another side to this because there's also people who are on this line that, that is not where they're exactly at, and this is where the healing comes in. So really some of these conversations could be quite brutal to an individual in that perspective. So that's also what we're doing is we're working more to create things that allow individuals to get exactly what they need, not just being in the stream of it. But there's obviously a lot of us, and I'm one of them for sure, that like being in the stream of the information, the new information coming, because tomorrow there could be something completely different, and more than likely
Right.
there is going to be. We have an ever-evolving expansion to what we're doing. We're not just, and it could be like a roller coaster for certain people, but others are just used to being on that roller coaster and enjoy the ride. And so I would also say that, as you ease into it, you start realizing that, you're just getting started. So you just kind of like, you take off your jacket is what I'm saying. Like some people stick with their jacket on, their gloves on, all their clothes, or CLOTHES, clothes, meaning that all of our expressions, our expressions have been completely hindered. And it's not saying that we need to go ahead and throw off all the clothes again, maybe, but maybe that would actually make people feel a lot more relaxed. But that's what I was saying about in the presence of a real master, there is a shedding of that shell. You crack, and you have to be real because you realize how much you've been pretending, but how much you've been not wanting to pretend. Right. To a certain point, like I said, if you happen to be in environments all the time where you have to be the tough guy, you want to be the tough guy, and you have to hold up, and then you're just huge shield. Then basically, that's what you are for everyone. You take in all the payload. Oh, they didn't pay rent. Oh my goodness, Quita fought with Jack. Bam. Oh my goodness, and you're taking all this in. They always call you about it, and this is because you develop a shell. So what we're doing is we're bringing those kind of individuals in that are very inclined to dealing with massive amounts of situations. They become bridges in their own environment, and then we're bridging them into the next stage of what they really are. Because in truth, on the higher level with their oversoul, they're doing that same thing on a more vast level. And so if they can connect more with that energy, then they actually have more components to utilize to do things with. And this is what I'm saying, that you're not just limited to the internet and these speakers and all this kind of stuff. You have energy coming out of the hands. You speak things into existence, and they just flourish everywhere. You are dynamo when it comes to energy. So those who are around you, they speed up and they regenerate themselves. Those are the other abilities that we have, and and locking those in proximity is going to get the world into a totally different stage. And this is also not about
kicking someone down the curb that may have done something in the past that actually caused the world to be in this situation. Because I think that everyone personally, if you really know what I know, is doing something to doom the world, like baby Illuminatis, I call it. So the reality is that whatever the kind of situation the person is dealing with, we have to be innovative enough to be able to be the true shamans, true physicians, whatever, and be able to cure those kind of ailments, because those are the more critical stages. So who's the real doctor then is what I'm saying. The guy who just wants to deal with headaches, or the guy who wants to deal with the bypass heart surgery, right? So what would that be equivalent to on the spiritual plane? Who's the real doctor then? The one who just wants to deal with the so-called saints, or the one who wants to shape up demons or diamonds? You see what I mean? So that's when because if you can do the other one, like if you can shape up demons and diamonds, you definitely can do the other one. And so that's the kind of training we want. It's like if you learn how to do this, then all that other stuff is going to be super simple. This is like if you learn how to lift the 200 pounds, 100 pounds is not going to be a problem to lift. You can probably run with it. So this is what we're talking about. But actually, there's no more talking. Like we're in action.
And also I feel we have to pick up the pieces we need. We all need different pieces of the puzzle. And that's where we're getting to, where we are throwing in both basic information as well as advanced. So people who need the basic stuff, they can go with that. And people who are already gone through that, they pick up the advanced stuff, right? And that's what
visual knowledge assists a lot with that. Because it can bring a person, especially if you know what you're doing. Like visual presentation is not just about matching what you're saying with the words. It's also understanding the entire rhythm of what you're presenting and to feel the audience. And so, but it's possible, because when you get into the complex topics, because my mom said something the other day, and she said even with some of my work that she didn't necessarily agree with, it was because that she was listening and trying to interpret it at the same time. Trying to actually judge it at the same time. But that's never how you learn anything. And that's never how it ever is. Like if you're in class, if the teacher says, okay, 2 plus 2, wait, I don't think 2 is even a number. And then you say, okay, all right, well, go ahead and sit down. Okay, so like I was saying, 2 plus 2 equals, wait, the equal sign is like 2 straight lines, but it's not really parallel because they meet themselves on the other side. You see, like that's not a way to learn anything. You have to actually sit down and say, okay, I'm not going to judge right now. I'm just going to listen. And then I'm going to hear all of this, and then I'm going to come to a conclusion at the end, but not the other way around. Because if I'm supposed to learn something here, just like any other school or any other course, it's going to mean I don't know it first. See, people approach the spiritual knowledge as, well, if he agrees with what I agree, then I'm with him. How does this ever get us anywhere? Like we would basically be in a circle because no one would ever be innovative. Everyone would keep regurgitating the same information. Hello, Christianity. Same book. It's like 3,000 years old. This thing's got dust on it. It's like for a whole other time we were like wearing, like everyone was wearing Birkenstocks back then. Like right now we're on Adidas pump. It's just a whole different framework, right? But if you're on that framework, it serves to keep you trapped in time, because it doesn't mean that nothing was wrong with that era. It just means that we're still moving, like we're going to go beyond that. And so this is the big thing. It's like some people want to get off the roller coaster. They got off at 0 BC. Look, it even tells you when they got off. They got off at 0 because supposedly when the Jesus was born, that's when time started over again. So that would be 0 point, right? So people need to understand what they're talking about. They hoop and holler about the 0 point. They act like they go out to the pyramids and they feel what it's really about, never realizing that the Nubian pyramids and really what's Upper Egypt was the ones that really pushed out energy, while the ones that were in Lower Egypt sucked in energy, because that's the difference in the geometry. But you would have to be living it, not studying it scientifically, to be able to really feel it, right? Because that's the only thing that's going to have value for you. Because when you're laying down on the bed, and like I said, maybe if the Philistines are upon you and it's ready for you to check out, it's going to be very difficult for you to associate what you read in a book only and never talk to or never experience with such a real moment. And what I mean by that is that if you're talking to God, and then God is using this weird sign language, because some people that they come up with this concoction and they say, well, God doesn't actually speak with me directly, but he shows me in signs. Well, we need direct, when you get on your deathbed, sign language is not going to work. You're not going to be able to assume what's going to happen. There's going to be a whole other thing coming over you. And that's what I was talking about in the beginning of this conversation about the formula. Because the formula is that I've been in situations in my life that were either life or death. Either like, are you going to, either God exists or he doesn't, because right now you're going to need to know, or else things are not going to go well. And so when you're in that kind of situation, or you can simulate that kind of situation for yourself, because we have some simulators here. We have people who love to go voyeur because they use tubes or TVs all the time. So they've learned how to simulate certain situations that they would need to, that they can feel what they would feel like in those situations. So for a moment, simulate yourself just in a situation where you don't have enough energy to overcome whatever it is that is upon you. At that point is not the point for you to figure out when you should have got stronger. Okay? Right now, while you're strong and you have your vigor, this is when you penetrate this and actually figure out what's going on. It's going to be, because Earth is an enigmatic place, a lot of stuff that's just going to blow right by you at first. Don't worry. Stick with it. This is not like college in a sense where we got to get periods going on, there's another class. This is just simply you looking at something that you don't understand and then realizing that you already understood it at one point. So the more that you actually hear it, and that was a Skype drop, so we're just on the Google, but the more that you actually hear it, the more you actually are able to realize that what it is, because it's truth. Okay? And so that's the only courtesy that we've done, everyone, is that we are bringing truth. And in truth, you will recognize it within yourself. So that's what makes this, at the end of the day, not so complex. As long as you're not overworking in thought land, logical land, and then you actually sit down and you say, well, what do I need to extract from this conversation? And then you'll find that the true bridges have bought every single thing for you, especially, personally, in these kind of conversations. And then the rest, what you cannot assess, becomes like a movie that you can actually see again. Because think about these days, how many times do you watch a movie these days? Once? Because you either watch it twice, you must be really, really bored, because there's no substance to it. But with these kind of conversations, they're enigmatic. I mean, this thing is, it's woven. It's like a Persian rug. It's like you can't even realize where the loop is connecting for the next color. That's the kind of world, that's the kind of life, that's the kind of emission that we exist within. And when we don't have that, because we're just like any other very exotic animal, when we don't have that, we start getting sad. Think about it. You take this big bird of paradise and you put him in this cage in this apartment in New York. What's going to happen? It's not going to be no time. First, you're going to start seeing feathers on the floor, and then you're going to start seeing the sulking of the bird, and then very shortly after that, you're going to see the perishing of the bird. So people need to realize that we're still living in a real organism that does need that kind of interaction and that kind of connection, that really sexual activity, and it's not just physical all the time, that happens with two individuals that are on the proper sphere together, and that they're ready to blend their differences in order to create something. And those differences become not things that we argue about, but that you know electricity and I know chemistry. You see, some people think that differences always have to do with negativity. Notice the hard coding and firmware of the mind. Differences have to do with negativity. If someone is different from me, then that's negative. But that's not true. Differences could be that, like I said, you could be a master in electricity and I could be a master in chemistry. That's two differences, because you're an electrician and I'm a chemist, and surely we can't go and play around in each other's stuff until we learn. But those differences become something we meld together in order to create the innovative device. How's it? So that's when you take evil then, because that's what supposedly negativity is, and then you've turned it into something positive because you brought light to it. Now, notice this then, the last riddle, the plus and the minus sign, and this shows us again that the language in the reality right now is hard coded for you to believe that what is positive is dualistic and what is negative is together. And let me show you. It's basically how everything is backwards, even the words backwards. B-A-C-K-W-A-R-D-S, W-A-R-D-S, drop the A, put the O in there, W-O-R-D-S, that the words are backwards. So the entire reality is moving backwards. So how you can see this, not only just with the even and odd numbers, which you'll have to catch the next show or last show when I explain that, but with the positive and negative symbol is that when you look at the negative symbol, what's supposed to be negative is one straight line. And we already talked about what that one straight line means, that one straight line actually contains a circle. So it actually is everything right there in that straight line, but that's negative. While positive, meaning good, is two lines intersecting one another, meaning actually crossing one another, that there's been some kind of conflict there. That's what two lines that cross each other mean. But that's positive. Go ahead and do that. So you see, This is the game that's being played. This is the hard code to the game. It's in the first level of it is the numbers. The second level of it is the symbols. The third level of it is the mathematical expressions. And the fourth level of it is languages, starting from the Latin Vulgate all the way through the rest of the languages. So that's it. That's all I have to say today.
All right, Sevan.
Right now, because, man, I'm already about to blow over here. Like, if I keep going, like, I'm going to go supernova on the phone. Tomorrow, obviously, we're going to be, man, I'm going to fight with not airing this tomorrow and just doing a show, because it does take quite a bit to push out this kind of information simultaneously. But at the same time, I need to get myself more prepared to be doing that anyway. Even though people are like, man, you've been doing this for like 6 years. What are you talking about? Well, because I just got started. As I keep telling people, I just got back. Like, realistically, it sounds strange, but I wasn't actually here. The individual that you're dealing with, though, before this point was definitely capable of handling things, and especially being a great conduit at bringing the information that I was discovering where I was to the spans here. But it's never going to be the same as me when I'm completely present and into experience, and also into doing what I need to do to stop time, because I can actually stop time. I did it for myself. And I also said this year, after the New Year's, that this was going to be the last year that I count time, that somehow I was going to find a way to actually usurp time this year. And I've done that because I discovered the unbegotten, which is the space that you have no senses in, which is why you can't divide it and why you can't perceive where you are. So this also lets me know where the reference point is for the bridge of how to go from being in the Zen, which is basically non-identified, not attaching to anything, to be into vast face, which is basically to know everything but mainly truth, and how all the dimensions connect, and how really as above, so below, if you can mine it, meaning that you have to have the type of mind, body, and soul that can penetrate the knowledge and the information that's being delivered to you on this particular plane, because it is a little further away from the original emission point to where things take place. And so just remember, getting to the control point of yourself allows you to see reality without distortion. When you're only seeing from this reality, not using your third eye, but using one of your lower chakras, you can see things in distortion and division, because that's what the different frequencies are. They're, in a sense, filters. So that's a big thing, you know.
Yes.
Even that one point right there, that little 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. So it was great chatting with you. I know we could go on and on for hours, but we're gonna continue again. Just to let listeners know, probably we're gonna have this every 2 or 3 weeks, and we're gonna post it on our website, soulfreedom.org. And why don't you just give us quickly your websites, and then we'll be done.
For sure. That you can definitely check us out at resistance2010.com, and also AstroQuest AstroQuest.tv is where we air the show. That'll actually be tomorrow. Yeah. Obviously, me and Lokesh are working on an amazing platform together at Secret Energy. There's just a little part page there, but the engine is there, and we're going to be brightening this thing up, and we're going to be creating more things that allow people to interact with each other, and to do this thing and collapse the time, because to collapse the time is to collapse the prism. To collapse the prism is to collapse the prison. And then there's a prison break, meaning that we actually get into the stage of consciousness of being like beings that are not in a cage. And so imagine how I'm going to run around. It's like super excited, right? Like I'm already accessing that now, because that's a space that I've had a chance to enjoy for some moments. And that's something that I want to deliver to this humanity, because, like I said, when you get kids in this, I was like this before I had my daughter, but even now more, I know what parents are really dealing with in this reality. Even our parents, we got to realize, there's parents everywhere. If you're not a parent yet, then think of your parent. It's by proxy. And, our parents, it's a big thing to have to deal with a world that doesn't show that it really can protect your child. But if that happens, and when that happens, there's this comfort that goes over all of the elders and all of the land and all of that, like the weather and everything just gets, everyone starts zoning in. They call that gelling. It's like everyone starts to really feel each other and realize each other's purpose. There's no walls of communication, that's blocked. So, that's what we're talking about. So 3 hours has kind of got me ready to run around a little bit. So I'm about to get out of here.
It was fun, Sevan. I'm looking forward to all the upcoming projects and shows. I'm very excited to work with you. It was great chatting with you.
Man, likewise, I do appreciate you hosting the show today. And obviously, it's been an awesome transmission. It was a great pleasure to be able to deliver that message here. And everything is super special. So this is a point in time that will be so, it may leave like a big ball, a light in the sky. Because that's what, in the end, I'll tell people that's what I think that these lights really are, is that they're like moments in time that, man, it was like something so massive that happened, it just had to leave a light.
Yeah.
And so I encourage everyone else, be a legend, leave a light. Like when you leave about this thing, put your print in it and let it be for the innovative greatness that you brought to it and how you completely metamorphosize the entire reality. Clean the oceans and all of that, clean the land and rejuvenate the deserts before you close the door. Because the men that did come before us that tried to put in certain levels of the abilities that we have showed us that there was the ability to do that. We can change weather with a small device. In a desert, all of a sudden the clouds start forming over it, and then it starts to rain, and things start to grow again. And then as far as this power and this electricity through this oil, Tesla had already showed them how to send wireless power using thunder. Because thunder, man, thunder is like such high voltage, but it doesn't damage us. So this means that what it powers doesn't damage us. Like the monitor, if we still chose to use liquid crystal displays, the emission coming from the monitor because of using electricity from the cosmos, it wouldn't be this kind of emission, because it's the same thing that all these devices are doing. They're just emitting what they're being fed with. So when you run a device on magnetic power, it doesn't run the same as a device that's run on electric power. So this is just when you start studying real power. That's what's up.
Yeah, we're going to do that together. And just for listeners, you can also tune into the show again at YouTube. It was airing live, but the recording is going to be there at the same URL where you saw the YouTube live stream. And again, Sevan, thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.